I finally know what I have to do. I know when it's right.
Groot, put your seatbelt on!
You're always picking up.
Move on, but not us.
This is the fight of...
After more than a decade of storytelling, everything led to this moment. Half the universe erased, the Avengers broken, and one final chance to set things right. In 2019, Marvel delivered the ultimate cinematic event, a battle of sacrifice, legacy, and destiny. This is the story of heroes uniting for the Endgame. Welcome to M Cinema Reviews. Today, we relive Avengers, Endgame. Avengers Endgame is a 2019 American superhero movie inspired by Marvel Comics' Avengers team. Created by Marvel Studios and released by Walt Disney Studios Motion Pictures, it directly follows Avengers: Infinity War, 2018, and stands as the 22nd entry in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, MCU. Directed by Anthony and Joe Russo, with a screenplay by Christopher Marcus and Stephen McFeely, the film showcases a large ensemble cast including Robert Downey Jr., Chris Evans, Mark Ruffalo, Chris Hemsworth, Scarlett Johansson, Jeremy Renner, Don Cheadle, Paul Rudd, Brie Larson, Karen Gillan, Danai Gurira, Benedict Wong, Jon Favreau, Bradley Cooper, Gwyneth Paltrow, and Josh Brolin. The story focuses on the surviving Avengers and their allies as they devise a plan to undo Thanos' devastating snap from Infinity War, which wiped out half of all life in the universe. Originally revealed in 2014 under the title Avengers: Infinity War Part 2, the project was later renamed. The Russo brothers were hired to direct in 2015, with Marcus and McFeely writing the script. Serving as the narrative conclusion to the MCU's first major saga, the film wraps up several character arcs while revisiting key events from earlier installments. Production began in August 2017 at Pinewood Atlanta Studios in Georgia, filmed back-to-back with Infinity War, and concluded in January 2018, with extra shoots in Atlanta, New York, Scotland, and England. The official title, Endgame, was revealed in December 2018 with a production cost estimated between $356 to $400 million. It ranks among the most expensive films ever made. The film debuted at the Los Angeles Convention Center on April 22, 2019, before its wide U.S. release on April 26 as part of Phase 3 of the MCU. Critics praised its direction, performances, emotional depth, action, score, and visual effects, celebrating it as a powerful culmination of the 22-film storyline. It turned $2.799 billion globally, overtaking Infinity War's total run in less than 2 weeks and shattering numerous box office records. From July 2019 until March 2021, it held the title of the highest-grossing film ever, before Avatar reclaimed the spot. The movie was nominated for Best Visual Effects at the 92nd Academy Awards and collected many other honors. Looking ahead, 2 more Avengers films, Avengers, Doomsday and Avengers, Secret Wars, are slated for release in 2026 and 2027. In 2018, just over 3 weeks after Thanos wiped out half of all life, Carol Danvers rescues Tony Stark and Nebula from space. They reunite on Earth with the remaining Avengers: Bruce Banner, Steve Rogers, Thor, Natasha Romanoff, James Rodessa and Rocket. After tracking Thanos to a distant planet, they discover he has destroyed the Infinity Stones to prevent their use. In fury, Thor kills him. 5 years later, Scott Lang escapes the quantum realm. Having only felt a few hours pass, he proposes that its properties could allow time travel. With Stark's reluctant help, along with Rocket and Banner, who has fused his intellect with the Hulk's body, the team develops a time machine. Banner explains that changing the past creates new timelines rather than altering the present. Rocket and Banner travel to New Asgard in Norway to recruit the broken and unmotivated Thor, while Natasha seeks out Clint Barton in Tokyo, who has become a violent vigilante after losing his family. The Avengers split into teams to retrieve the stones from earlier points in time. Banner convinces the Ancient One in 2012 New York to surrender the Time Stone. Rogers takes the Mind Stone from Hydra infiltrators, but a mishap lets Loki escape with the Space Stone. To recover, Stark and Rogers travel to 1970, where Stark obtains another version of the Space Stone and meets his father, while Rogers collects Pym particles and glimpses Peggy Carter. Meanwhile, Rocket and Thor journey to Asgard in 2013 to secure the Reality Stone from Jane Foster, with Thor finding encouragement from his mother and reclaiming Mjolnir. In 2014, Rhodes and Nebula seize the Power Stone on Morag before Peter Quill arrives, while Barton and Romanoff head to Vorm. There, Romanoff sacrifices herself so Barton can obtain the Soul Stone. When Rhodes and Nebula attempt to return, Nebula is captured after linking with her past self, exposing the Avengers' plan to 2014 Thanos. He sends his younger Nebula to infiltrate the present timeline. Back in their time, the Avengers create a gauntlet for the stones. Banner wields it, reversing Thanos' snap. But 2014 Nebula brings Thanos and his army into the present, destroying the Avengers compound. In the ensuing battle, Thanos overpowers Rogers, Thor, and Stark. Rogers briefly wields Mjolnir, but Thanos remains relentless. Just as all seems lost, portals open to Doctor Strange, the rest toward heroes, the Guardians, Wakanda's warriors, the Asgardians, and others join the fight. Danvers arrives, destroying Thanos' warship, but Thanos still gains control of the gauntlet. In a final act, Stark seizes the stones and uses them to erase Thanos and his army, sacrificing his own life. After Stark's funeral, Thor names Valkyrie ruler of New Asgard and joins the Guardians. Rogers travels through time to return the stones and Mjolnir, but chooses to stay in the past to live with Peggy Carter. In the present, an elderly Rogers passes his shield and the mantle of Captain America to Sam Wilson. The epic Ensemble, a comprehensive look at Avengers, Endgame, 2019, casting introduction, the culmination of a decade. One Avengers, Endgame premiered on April 26, 2019, It represented more than just another superhero film. It was the culmination of 11 years and 22 interconnected movies that began with Iron Man in 2008. The ensemble cast that includes Robert Downey Jr., Chris Evans, Mark Ruffalo, Chris Hemsworth, Scarlett Johansson, Jeremy Renner, Don Cheadle, Paul Rudd, Brie Larson, Karen Gillan, Danai Gurira, Benedict Wong, Jon Favreau, Bradley Cooper, Gwyneth Paltrow and many others brought together the largest superhero ensemble ever assembled for a single film. The casting of Avengers: Endgame was not just about selecting actors for roles, it was about bringing together a family of performers who had grown alongside their characters for over a decade. This monumental task required careful consideration of character arcs, actor availability, contractual obligations, and the emotional weight of concluding storylines that had captivated audiences worldwide. The original six, the heart of the Marvel Cinematic Universe: Robert Downey Jr. as Tony Stark, Iron Man. Robert Downey Jr. as Tony Stark, Iron Man, the benefactor of the Avengers who describes himself as a genius, billionaire, playboy, and philanthropist with electromechanical suits of armor he made. According to directors Joe and Anthony Russo, Downey was the only actor to receive the entire script for the film, highlighting his central importance to the story. Downey Jr.'s casting as Iron Man in 2008 was initially considered risky due to his troubled past, but it proved to be the foundation upon which the entire Marvel Cinematic Universe was built. Robert Downey Jr.'s first appearance as Tony Stark in 2008's Iron Man, the MCU's first film, made the actor $500,000, which increased to $10 million upfront, and eventually amounted to $50 million due to the film's success, for his appearance in the Avengers 4 years later. By the time Endgame was in production, Downey Jr. had become synonymous with Tony Stark, and his performance in the film served as both a culmination of his character's journey and a farewell to the role that had defined his career's second act. The weight of carrying the emotional core of the film's conclusion rested heavily on his shoulders, and his nuanced performance delivered on the expectations of millions of fans worldwide. The decision to give Downey Jr. the complete script while other actors received only their scenes demonstrated the trust the Russo brothers placed in him and acknowledged his role as the unofficial leader of the ensemble cast. His improvisation skills and deep understanding of Tony Stark's psychology were crucial in crafting the character's final arc. Chris Evans as Steve Rogers, Captain America. Chris Evans' portrayal of Captain America became the moral compass of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and his casting in Endgame represented the completion of one of the most satisfying character arcs in modern cinema. Evans initially turned down the part, but he consulted with Robert Downey Jr., who encouraged him to take the role. At Marvel's persistence, Evans accepted the multi-film deal that would define his career. Evans brought a sincerity and authenticity to Steve Rogers that made the character's unwavering moral code believable and inspiring rather than naive or outdated. His chemistry with the ensemble cast, particularly his dynamic with Robert Downey Jr.'s Tony Stark, provided some of the most compelling interpersonal drama throughout the MCU's development. In Endgame, Evans' performance required him to portray a Steve Rogers who had experienced loss, leadership burdens, and the weight of making impossible decisions. The emotional depth he brought to scenes with Peggy Carter and his final decision to pass the Captain America mantle to Sam Wilson demonstrated his growth as both an actor and understanding of his character. The physical demands of the role also required Evans to maintain peak physical condition throughout his MCU tenure. His dedication to the physicality of Captain America, combined with his acting prowess, created a superhero who felt both larger-than-life and genuinely human. Scarlett Johansson as Natasha Romanoff, Black Widow. Scarlett Johansson's Black Widow was initially introduced as a supporting character in Iron Man 2, but her compelling portrayal led to an expanded role throughout the MCU. Her casting in Endgame was particularly significant as it provided closure to a character who had been seeking redemption for her past throughout her entire arc. Johansson brought a complexity to Natasha Romanoff that made her more than just a skilled assassin. Her ability to convey vulnerability beneath the hardened exterior, combined with her impressive action sequences, made Black Widow one of the most compelling characters in the ensemble. The emotional weight she carried in Endgame, particularly in her scenes with Jeremy Renner's Hawkeye, showcased her dramatic range. Her preparation for the role involved extensive physical training and stunt work, making her action sequences feel authentic and impactful. Johansson's commitment to the character's physicality was matched by her dedication to exploring Natasha's emotional journey, making her sacrifice in Endgame one of the film's most heart-wrenching moments. Mark Ruffalo as Bruce Banner, Hulk. Mark Ruffalo took over the role of Bruce Banner from Edward Norton after The Incredible Hulk, bringing a different interpretation to the character that emphasized the scientist over the monster. His casting brought a neurotic intelligence and dry humor that perfectly complemented the ensemble dynamic. Ruffalo's approach to Bruce Banner, Hulk in Endgame required him to portray a character who had finally found balance between his two identities. This Professor Hulk version represented the culmination of Banner's character development, and Ruffalo's performance combined his established portrayal of Banner's neuroses with a newfound confidence and peace. The technical aspects of Ruffalo's performance as Professor Hulk required extensive motion capture work and close collaboration with the visual effects team. His ability to maintain Bruce Banner's essential characteristics while embodying the Hulk's physicality demonstrated his versatility as a performer and his understanding of both aspects of the character. Chris Hemsworth as Thor. Chris Hemsworth's evolution as Thor throughout the MCU reached its peak in Endgame, where his performance balanced comedy, drama, and action in ways that showcased his range as an actor. His casting brought both the physical presence necessary for the God of Thunder and the comedic timing that made Thor's later appearances so memorable. In Endgame, Hemsworth portrayed a broken Thor dealing with depression and trauma following his failure to stop Thanos in Infinity War. This version of the character required Hemsworth to explore new emotional territory while maintaining the essential characteristics that made Thor beloved by audiences. The physical transformation Hemsworth underwent for the role, including the use of prosthetics to create Fat Thor, demonstrated his commitment to the character's emotional journey. His ability to find humor in Thor's lowest moments while never making light of his genuine pain showed remarkable sensitivity and skill. Jeremy Renner as Clint Barton, Hawkeye. Jeremy Renner's Hawkeye served as the everyman among gods and super soldiers, bringing a grounded humanity to the cosmic scope of the Avengers. His casting provided an essential anchor for audiences, representing what ordinary people could achieve with extraordinary skill and determination. Renner's portrayal of Hawkeye in Endgame required him to explore the character's dark period as Ronin, following the loss of his family in the blip. His performance captured both the ruthless efficiency of a man with nothing left to lose and the underlying pain driving his actions. The emotional core of Renner's performance lay in his relationships with his fellow Avengers, particularly his friendship with Natasha Romanoff. His chemistry with Scarlett Johansson provided some of the most emotionally resonant moments in the film, culminating in the heartbreaking sequence on Vormir. The extended Marvel family. Josh Brolin as Thanos. Josh Brolin's casting as Thanos was crucial to the success of both Infinity War and Endgame, as he needed to make the Mad Titan a compelling and terrifying antagonist worthy of the Avengers' greatest challenge. Brolin's voice work and motion capture performance created a villain who was both monstrous and oddly sympathetic. In Endgame, Brolin portrayed two different versions of Thanos: the post-snap version who had achieved his goal and the 2014 version who was yet to complete his mission. His ability to differentiate between these two incarnations while maintaining the character's essential characteristics demonstrated his skill as a performer. The technical demands of playing Thanos required Brolin to work extensively with motion capture technology while delivering emotionally complex performances. His ability to convey the character's twisted logic and genuine belief in his mission made Thanos one of the most compelling villains in superhero cinema. Brie Larson as Carol Danvers, Captain Marvel. Brie Larson's introduction as Captain Marvel in her solo film made her casting in Endgame highly anticipated, as she brought the most powerful hero in the MCU into the final battle against Thanos. Her performance needed to balance Captain Marvel's incredible abilities with her relative newcomer status to the team dynamic. Larson's portrayal emphasized Carol Danvers' military background and no-nonsense attitude, creating a character who could stand toe-to-toe with the established Avengers both in terms of power and personality. Her limited screen time in Endgame was used efficiently to establish her role in the cosmic order while respecting the focus on the original Avengers. The physical demands of playing Captain Marvel required Larson to undergo extensive training and work closely with stunt coordinators to create convincing action sequences. Her ability to convey immense power while maintaining the character's humanity was crucial to making Captain Marvel feel integrated into the MCU rather than merely a deus ex machina. Paul Rudd as Scott Lang. Ant-Man. Paul Rudd's casting as Ant-Man brought a unique comedic sensibility to the MCU, and his role in Endgame was pivotal to the plot's time travel mechanics. His everyman quality and natural humor made him an ideal character to propose the seemingly impossible plan that would drive the film's narrative. Rudd's performance in Endgame required him to balance his character's comedic tendencies with the gravity of the situation and his role as a father desperate to reunite with his daughter. His ability to convey both the wonder of the quantum realm concepts and the emotional stakes of the mission was crucial to the film's success. The technical aspects of playing Ant-Man required Rudd to work with various scales and visual effects, maintaining consistent characterization whether Scott Lang was normal-sized, shrunk down, or enlarged. His grounded performance helped audiences accept the fantastical elements of the quantum realm plot device. Don Cheadle as James Reddy Rhodes. War Machine. Don Cheadle took over the role of War Machine from Terrence Howard after Iron Man, bringing a different energy to Tony Stark's best friend and military liaison. His casting provided a crucial military perspective to the team and a grounding influence on Tony's more impulsive tendencies. In Endgame, Cheadle's performance emphasized Reddy's loyalty to Tony and his role as a bridge between the military and superhero communities. His scenes during the time heist demonstrated his ability to handle both action sequences and character moments with equal skill. Cheadle's long-term commitment to the role allowed him to develop a deep understanding of Reddy's relationship with Tony Stark, making their scenes together some of the most authentic friendship moments in the film. His reaction to Tony's sacrifice was particularly poignant due to the genuine emotion Cheadle brought to the role. Karen Gillan as Nebula. Karen Gillan's evolution from secondary antagonist to beloved team member represented one of the MCU's most successful character development arcs, and her casting in Endgame required her to portray multiple versions of Nebula across different timelines. Gillan's performance distinguished between the present-day Nebula who had found family with the Guardians and Avengers and the 2014 version still loyal to Thanos. Her ability to make these versions feel like distinct characters while maintaining essential Nebula characteristics was crucial to the time travel plot. The technical demands of playing Nebula required extensive makeup and prosthetics work, but Gillan's emotional performance always came through the alien exterior. Her character's relationship with Tony Stark provided unexpected heart to the film, showcasing Gillan's ability to find humanity in an artificial character. Donna Gurira as Echo. Donna Gurira's portrayal of Echo brought strength, loyalty, and fierce intelligence to the ensemble cast. Her casting represented the expansion of the MCU to include more diverse voices and perspectives, and her performance in Endgame demonstrated why Echo became such a fan-favorite character. Gurira's background in theater and her understanding of warrior cultures informed her portrayal of the Door-Mileage General. Her ability to convey authority and competence while working within an ensemble cast made her scenes impactful despite limited screen time. The physical demands of playing Echo required Gurira to master complex fight choreography and work with traditional African weapons. Her commitment to the role's physicality matched her dedication to bringing depth and authenticity to the character. Supporting cast excellence. Benedict Wong as Wong. Benedict Wong's portrayal of Wong evolved from comic relief in Doctor Strange to a crucial member of the mystical community defending Earth. His casting in Endgame, though brief, was significant for fans who had grown to love his dry humor and competent magical abilities. Wong's performance balanced the mystical gravitas required for a master of the mystic arts with the natural humor that made the character memorable. His ability to deliver exposition about magical concepts while maintaining character authenticity was valuable to the ensemble scenes. Jon Favreau as Happy Hogan. Jon Favreau's dual role as both director of the first two Iron Man films and actor playing Happy Happy Hogan gave him unique insight into Tony Stark's world. His casting in Endgame provided continuity from the very beginning of the MCU and emotional weight to Tony's final scenes. Favreau's performance as Happy emphasized the character's loyalty and genuine affection for the Stark family. His scenes with both Tony and later with Morgan Stark demonstrated his ability to convey deep friendship and protective instincts with subtle, naturalistic acting. Gwyneth Paltrow as Pepper Potts. Gwyneth Paltrow's return as Pepper Potts in Endgame was crucial for Tony Stark's emotional arc and provided closure to the relationship that had been developing since the first Iron Man film. Her casting brought continuity and emotional authenticity to Tony's personal stakes in the final battle. Paltrow's performance required her to portray Pepper's growth from assistant to CEO to wife and mother, while also handling the technical demands of the rescue armor sequences. Her chemistry with Robert Downey Jr. remained one of the MCU's most convincing romantic relationships. Bradley Cooper as Rocket Raccoon. Voice. Bradley Cooper's voice work as Rocket Raccoon required him to bring emotional depth to what could have been simply a comedic character. His casting in Endgame was particularly important as Rocket dealt with the loss of his Guardians family and found new connections with the Avengers. Cooper's performance captured Rocket's tough exterior hiding deep emotional wounds, making his scenes with other characters both funny and touching. His ability to convey complex emotions through voice work alone demonstrated his skill as a performer and understanding of the character. The time travel ensemble. One of the most challenging aspects of casting Endgame was the time travel sequences that required many actors to reprise roles from previous films, sometimes playing multiple versions of their characters. This presented unique challenges and opportunities for both familiar and new performances. Michael Douglas as Hank Pym. Michael Douglas's return as Hank Pym was crucial for the quantum realm plot device, and his presence lent gravitas to the scientific explanations driving the time travel mechanics. His casting provided a connection to the Ant-Man films and established the credibility needed for audiences to accept the time travel solution. Douglas's performance balanced his character's scientific brilliance with his protective instincts toward his daughter Hope. His ability to deliver complex exposition while maintaining character authenticity was valuable to making the quantum realm concepts accessible to audiences. Michelle Pfeiffer as Janet Van Dyne. Michelle Pfeiffer's portrayal of Janet Van Dyne provided crucial information about the quantum realm while bringing star power to the ensemble. Her casting represented the high caliber of actors the MCU could attract even for relatively small roles. Pfeiffer's performance emphasized Janet's wisdom gained from decades in the quantum realm and her relief at being reunited with her family. Her scenes helped ground the fantastic quantum realm concepts and emotional reality. Tilda Swinton as the Ancient One. Tilda Swinton's return as the Ancient One was crucial for the time travel sequence at the Sanctum Sanctorum, and her presence brought mystical authority to the complex rules governing the time travel mechanics. Her casting provided continuity with Doctor Strange while advancing the plot. Swinton's performance balanced the Ancient One's cosmic perspective with her understanding of individual human stakes. Her ability to deliver complex metaphysical concepts while maintaining character authenticity helped audiences understand the time travel rules. Rene Russo as Frigga. Rene Russo's return as Frigga provided crucial emotional support for Thor's character arc during the time travel sequence to Asgard. Her casting was essential for exploring Thor's relationship with his mother and his need for forgiveness and understanding. Russo's performance captured Frigga's wisdom and maternal love while acknowledging the strange circumstances of meeting her future son. Her ability to convey both recognition of Thor's pain and confidence in his essential goodness was crucial for his character development. John Slattery as Howard Stark. John Slattery's portrayal of Howard Stark provided emotional resonance for Tony's time travel mission and offered insights into the Stark family legacy. His casting created connections between past and present while exploring themes of family, legacy, and redemption. Slattery's performance balanced Howard's genius and ambition with his genuine love for his family. His scenes with Tony, though Howard didn't know his identity, were crucial for Tony's emotional resolution and understanding of his father. The final battle ensemble. The climactic battle of Endgame required coordinating the largest superhero ensemble ever assembled for a single sequence, bringing together characters from across the MCU in a celebration of the entire franchise. Tom Holland as Peter Parker. Spider-Man. Tom Holland's return as Spider-Man was highly anticipated by fans who had been devastated by his dusting in Infinity War. His casting in the final battle required him to portray Peter's confusion about the time that had passed while maintaining his youthful enthusiasm and determination. Holland's performance captured Peter's genuine hero instincts and his emotional connection to Tony Stark. His scenes during the final battle demonstrated his growth as both a hero and an actor, particularly in his interactions with the Infinity Gauntlet. Chadwick Boseman as T'Challa/Black Panther. Chadwick Boseman's return as Black Panther was one of the most emotional moments of the final battle, and his performance captured both T'Challa's regal bearing and his genuine relief at being restored to life. His presence in the battle provided crucial representation and inspiration. Boseman's commitment to the role's physical and cultural authenticity continued in Endgame, where his brief but impactful scenes reminded audiences of Black Panther's importance to the MCU. His performance balanced action heroics with the character's deeper symbolic significance. Elizabeth Olsen as Wanda Maximoff. Scarlet Witch. Elizabeth Olsen's portrayal of Wanda Maximoff in the final battle was particularly powerful due to her character's personal vendetta against Thanos. Her performance required her to channel Wanda's grief and rage into a display of incredible power that nearly defeated the Mad Titan. Olsen's ability to convey both vulnerability and immense power made her confrontation with Thanos one of the battle's most memorable moments. Her performance demonstrated Wanda's growth from confused teenager to one of the most powerful Avengers. Anthony Mackie as Sam Wilson. Falcon. Anthony Mackie's performance as Falcon in this final battle set up his eventual role as the new Captain America, and his scenes with Steve Rogers provided crucial character development for both roles. His casting represented the passing of the torch to a new generation of heroes. Mackie's aerial sequences in the final battle showcased his character's tactical intelligence and aerial combat skills while maintaining Sam's essential humanity and loyalty to his friends. His reaction to receiving the Captain America shield was perfectly calibrated to honor both characters. Sebastian Stan as Bucky Barnes. Winter Soldier. Sebastian Stan's portrayal of Bucky Barnes in Endgame required him to show a character who had finally found peace after decades of trauma and manipulation. His performance in the final battle and his farewell to Steve Rogers demonstrated his understanding of their friendship's depth. Stan's ability to convey Bucky's knowledge of Steve's decision before it was revealed showed his deep understanding of the character relationships. His subtle performance choices added emotional weight to Steve's character arc. Conclusion. Technical and artistic considerations. Motion capture performances. Several key performances in Endgame required extensive motion capture work, creating unique challenges for the actors involved. Josh Brolin's Thanos, Mark Ruffalo's Professor Hulk, and Bradley Cooper's Rocket Raccoon all required performers to create compelling characters through technology-mediated performances. The motion capture process required actors to maintain consistent characterization while working with limited immediate feedback about their final appearance. The success of these performances demonstrated the skill of the actors and the advancement of motion capture technology. Ensemble coordination. Coordinating an ensemble cast of this size required careful planning and scheduling, as not all actors were available for the entire production period. The directors and casting team had to balance character importance, actor availability, and budget constraints while maintaining narrative coherence. The success of the ensemble work in Endgame was due to the relationships built over multiple films and the actors' deep understanding of their characters. The natural chemistry between cast members translated into authentic on-screen relationships. Emotional authenticity. Despite the fantastical elements of the story, the casting required actors who could ground their performances in genuine emotion. The film's success depended on audiences believing in the characters' relationships and caring about their fates. The actors' commitment to their roles' emotional truth, even when surrounded by green screens and CGI, was crucial to the film's emotional impact. Their ability to find authentic moments within the spectacle made the epic scope feel personal. Legacy and impact. Career-defining performances for many actors. Their roles in Endgame represented career-defining performances that would be remembered long after other work was forgotten. Robert Downey Jr.'s Tony Stark, Chris Evans's Captain America, and Scarlett Johansson's Black Widow became iconic characters that transcended the superhero genre. The cultural impact of these performances extended beyond entertainment, with characters becoming symbols of heroism, sacrifice, and growth that resonated with audiences worldwide. The actors' commitment to their roles created lasting legacies in popular culture. Representation and diversity. The casting of Endgame, while still imperfect, represented significant progress in superhero film representation. The inclusion of actors like Donna Guerrera, Brie Larson, and the diverse ensemble reflected growing awareness of the importance of inclusive storytelling. The success of those diverse performances helped pave the way for future MCU projects with even greater representation, proving that superhero stories could succeed while reflecting the diversity of their global audience. Technical achievement. The performances in Endgame pushed the boundaries of what was possible in terms of coordinating large ensemble casts and integrating practical performances with extensive visual effects. The technical achievements in casting and performance became benchmarks for future epic films. The success of the film demonstrated that audiences would embrace complex, interconnected storytelling when supported by strong performances and careful character development over multiple films. Behind the scenes, the casting process. Long-term planning. The casting for Endgame began years before production, with many actors locked into multi-picture deals that guaranteed their availability for the climactic film. This long-term planning allowed for character arcs that spanned multiple films and created genuine investment from both actors and audiences. The success of this approach influenced how other studios approached franchise filmmaking, demonstrating the value of long-term character development and actor relationships in creating successful cinematic universes. Contract negotiations. The complexity of negotiating contracts for an ensemble of this size required careful coordination between agents, studios, and production companies. Factors including salary, screen time, promotional commitments, and future film options all had to be balanced. The success of these negotiations allowed for the creation of a film that honored all the major characters while managing production costs and ensuring actor satisfaction. The positive relationships maintained throughout the process facilitated future collaborations. Creative collaboration. The casting process involved extensive collaboration between directors, producers, writers, and actors to ensure that each character received appropriate treatment in the story. This collaborative approach helped maintain the quality of individual performances while serving the larger narrative. The trust built through this collaborative process allowed actors to take creative risks and make bold choices that enhanced their performances and the overall film quality. Conclusion. The perfect assembly. The casting of Avengers Endgame represents one of the most successful ensemble casting achievements in film history. The combination of established stars, emerging talents, and dedicated character actors created a film that satisfied both casual viewers and devoted fans while concluding storylines that had been developing for over a decade. The success of the casting was measured not just in box office returns, though the film became the highest-grossing movie of all time, but in the emotional satisfaction and cultural impact it achieved. The performances created moments that became part of popular culture and demonstrated the power of collaborative storytelling. The legacy of Endgame's casting extends beyond the film itself, influencing how studios approach franchise filmmaking and demonstrating the value of long-term character development. The relationships between actors, characters, and audiences created through this process became a template for successful cinematic universe construction. As the MCU continues to evolve and expand, the casting of Endgame remains a benchmark for ensemble filmmaking and character development. The film proved that superhero movies could achieve both spectacular action and genuine emotional depth when supported by committed performances and careful character work. The assembly of Earth's mightiest heroes on screen was matched by the assembly of one of cinema's mightiest casts, creating a film that honored the past while pointing toward the future of superhero storytelling. The casting choices made for Endgame will continue to influence how audiences understand heroism, sacrifice, and the power of working together to overcome seemingly impossible odds. In the end, the casting of Avengers Endgame succeeded because it understood that beneath all the spectacle and special effects, Audiences care most about characters and the people who bring them to life. The actors who assembled for this final battle created something larger than the sum of its parts, a genuine epic that celebrated the best of both superhero storytelling and ensemble filmmaking. Avengers: Endgame, 2019, the culmination of the Marvel Cinematic Universe introduction. Avengers: Endgame stands as one of the most significant achievements in modern cinema, representing not just the conclusion of a single film but the culmination of an unprecedented 22-film narrative arc spanning over a decade. Directed by Anthony and Joe Russo and written by Christopher Marcus and Stephen McFeely, the film features an ensemble cast which includes Robert Downey Jr., Chris Evans, Mark Ruffalo, Chris Hemsworth, Scarlett Johansson, Jeremy Renner, Don Cheadle, Paul Rudd, Brie Larson, Karen Gillan, Danai Gurira, Benedict Wong, Jon Favreau, Bradley Cooper, Gwyneth Paltrow, and Josh Brolin. This epic superhero film served as the direct sequel to Avengers: Infinity War, 2018, and became a cultural phenomenon that redefined what blockbuster entertainment could achieve both artistically and commercially. Production development and pre-production. The journey toward Avengers: Endgame began years before cameras started rolling, emerging from Marvel Studios' ambitious long-term planning strategy. In October 2014, Marvel Studios announced a two-part sequel of Avengers: Age of Ultron, 2015, entitled Avengers: Infinity War. Part 1 was scheduled to be released on May 4, 2018, and Part 2 was scheduled for May 3, 2019. The initial concept envisioned both films as interconnected parts of a single, massive story that would bring the Marvel Cinematic Universe's first phase to its climactic conclusion. Anthony and Joe Russo were hired to direct the films in April 2015. The Russo brothers had previously demonstrated their mastery of ensemble superhero storytelling with Captain America: The Winter Soldier, 2014, and Captain America: Civil War, 2016, making them the logical choice to helm such an ambitious project. The next month, Christopher Marcus and Stephen McFeely signed on to write screenplays for both parts of the film. This writing duo had worked extensively with the Russo brothers on previous Captain America films, establishing a creative partnership that would prove crucial to managing the complex narrative demands of Endgame. The development process faced unique challenges from the outset. Producer Kevin Feige said that the sequel was titled as two parts of a single film because of shared elements, but they would be two distinct projects, not one story split across two films. This distinction became increasingly important as the creative team realized the scope and complexity of what they were attempting to accomplish. The Russos decided to retitle the two films to remove any misconceptions in May 2016, and Marvel left the second film entitled that July. This decision reflected the evolving understanding that while Infinity War and its sequel shared thematic and narrative connections, each film needed to function as a complete cinematic experience. Feige and the Russo brothers indicated that the title was being withheld because it would give away plot details for this film and Infinity War. The pre-production phase involved extensive coordination between multiple departments to manage the logistical challenges of such a massive undertaking. Marvel's plan was to film both parts of Infinity War back-to-back. This approach required unprecedented planning, as the production team had to coordinate schedules for dozens of major stars, design and construct elaborate sets, and develop complex visual effects sequences years in advance. The screenplay development process was particularly intricate, as Marcus and McFeely had to craft a narrative that would serve as a satisfying conclusion to character arcs that had been developing for over a decade. According to directors Joe and Anthony Russo, Downey was the only actor to receive the entire screenplay for the film. This security measure reflected both the unprecedented level of secrecy surrounding the project and the central importance of Tony Stark's character to the overall narrative. The writers faced the challenge of bringing together storylines from across the MCU while ensuring that each character received appropriate closure. Screenwriters Christopher Marcus and Stephen McFeely knew that Stark's death was inevitable as a move to selflessness and as an end to the chapter Stark began. They felt that his death was earned after granting him the perfect retirement life. That's the life he's been striving for. They got married, they had a kid, "It was great. It's a good death. It doesn't feel like a tragedy. It feels like a heroic, finished life." Similarly, the writers had to carefully consider the conclusion of Steve Rogers' story arc. McFeely knew that Rogers was going to get his dance that he promised Peggy Carter in Captain America, the First Avenger, 2011. He initially planned to complete Rogers' story arc by killing him off, given the character's long life for his occupation, before deciding to have Rogers abandon his shield. Filming of Avengers, Endgame represented one of the most ambitious production schedules in Hollywood history. Principal photography began on August 10, 2017, under the working title Mary Lou 2 at Pinewood Atlanta Studios in Fayette County, Georgia, with Trent Opolak the director of photography. The use of a working title was essential to maintain secrecy around the highly anticipated project, preventing unauthorized leaks and maintaining the element of surprise that would prove crucial to the film's impact. The film and Infinity War were shot with Alexa IMAX 2D cameras, the first time a Hollywood feature film was shot entirely with IMAX digital cameras. This technical innovation allowed the filmmakers to capture unprecedented image quality and prepare the film for optimal presentation in IMAX theaters, which would become a significant component of its commercial success. The production schedule was grueling and complex. Filming was done that month in the Gulch area of downtown Atlanta, near the Five Points MARTA station, and in Piedmont Park. The Georgia locations provided both practical backdrops and significant tax incentives that made the massive production financially feasible. The decision to film both movies simultaneously presented both opportunities and challenges. Feige said that the films were originally scheduled to be filmed simultaneously but were ultimately shot back-to-back. "It became too complicated to cross-board them like that, and we found ourselves again. Something would always pay the price. We wanted to be able to focus and shoot one movie and then focus and shoot another movie." Anthony Russo originally felt that it made more sense to shoot the film simultaneously for financial and logistical reasons, including the large number of cast members, and had suggested that some days we'll be shooting the first movie and some days we'll be shooting the second movie, just jumping back and forth. However, the practical realities of managing such a complex production ultimately necessitated a more sequential approach. International filming locations added additional layers of authenticity and visual splendor to the production. The 2013 Ascot scenes were shot at Durham Cathedral in Durham, England during production of Infinity War in early May 2017. This historic location provided the grandeur and otherworldly atmosphere necessary for the Asgardian sequences while connecting the film to real-world architectural magnificence. Location shooting also took place in Streatham, Scotland, which doubled for New Asgard in Norway. The Scottish coastal location provided the rugged, windswept atmosphere that perfectly captured the somber tone of Thor's post-Infinity War retreat. Production wrapped on January 11, 2018, although additional filming took place in New York's Dutchess and Ulster counties in June 2018. The extended production schedule reflected both the complexity of the material and the perfectionist approach of the filmmakers, who were determined to ensure that every element of the film met the highest possible standards. The commitment to excellence extended through multiple rounds of additional filming. Reshoots began by September 7, 2018, and ended on October 12. More reshoots were done in January 2019. These extensive reshoots were not indicative of problems with the original footage but rather represented the filmmakers' dedication to refining every aspect of the film to achieve their vision. The financial investment in the cast reflected the importance of securing the return of key performers. Evans and Hemsworth earned $15 million each for the film. These substantial payments ensured the participation of actors whose characters were essential to the film's emotional impact and commercial appeal. Post-production. The post-production phase of Avengers, Endgame was as complex and ambitious as the filming itself, involving cutting-edge visual effects work, intricate editing, and careful attention to every technical detail. The film's official title, Avengers, Endgame, and final U.S. release date of April 26, 2019, were revealed with the film's first trailer in December 2018. The timing of this reveal demonstrated the careful marketing strategy that accompanied the film's creation. Visual effects work represented perhaps the most technically demanding aspect of post-production. Visual effects for the film were created by Industrial Light Magic, Weta Digital, NEG, Framestore, CineSite, Digital Domain, Rise, Lola VFX, Cantina Creative, Capital T, Technicolor VFX, and Territory Studio. The involvement of multiple premier visual effects companies worldwide reflected both the scope of the work required and the tight deadline constraints facing the production. The aging technology represented a particularly significant technical achievement. Like previous MCU films, Lola worked on the de-aging scenes. The film has 200 de-aging and aging shots. This extensive use of digital age manipulation allowed the filmmakers to seamlessly integrate flashback sequences and time travel elements that were crucial to the film's narrative structure. Downey, Evans, Ruffalo, Hemsworth, Johansson, and Renner were de-aged to their 2012 appearances for scenes recreated from The Avengers. 2012. This technical achievement allowed the film to literally revisit key moments from the MCU's history while maintaining visual consistency and believability. The de-aging work extended beyond the main cast. Michael Douglas, John Slattery, and Stan Lee were also de-aged for the 1970 New Jersey scene, and Douglas's appearance in the streets of San Francisco was referenced. These details demonstrated the meticulous attention to historical accuracy and visual continuity that characterized the entire post-production process. The aging effects were equally sophisticated. Lola aged Evans for the final scene, where he is an elderly man, with makeup and a stand-in. This combination of practical and digital effects created one of the film's most emotionally resonant moments while maintaining technical excellence. Jeffrey Ford and Matthew Schmidt were the film's editors. Their work involved the monumental task of assembling a coherent 3-hour narrative from hundreds of hours of footage, balancing action sequences with character moments, and maintaining pacing that would sustain audience engagement throughout the epic runtime. Music. The musical score of Avengers: Endgame played a crucial role in creating the emotional resonance that distinguished the film from typical blockbuster fare. Alan Silvestri, who composed the score for The Avengers, was announced in June 2016 to be returning to score Infinity War and Endgame. Silvestri's return ensured musical continuity with the broader MCU while providing the opportunity to bring established themes to their climactic conclusion. The Russos began working with Silvestri on the Endgame score in early November 2018, and it was completed in late March 2019. This relatively compressed timeline reflected both Silvestri's experience with the MCU musical language and the efficiency of his collaborative relationship with the directors. A soundtrack album with Silvestri's score was released digitally by Hollywood Records on April 26, 2019. With a physical release on May 24. The simultaneous digital release with the film's theatrical debut reflected the modern distribution strategies that maximize audience engagement across multiple platforms. Silvestri's approach to the Endgame score demonstrated remarkable musical sophistication. Silvestri described the score as having the franchise's most versatile tone, ranging from thunderous percussion and powerful brass for the action scenes to minimalist, jazz-inspired music for Ant-Man and the Quantum Realm. This range allowed the music to serve the film's diverse tonal requirements while maintaining overall cohesion. He reprised his themes from the previous Avengers films and Captain America: The First Avenger, including material he wrote for Thanos and the Infinity Stones in Infinity War. This thematic continuity helped create the sense of culmination and resolution that was essential to the film's emotional impact. Silvestri found writing the music to end Captain America's story poignant, since he had been on this journey with him since the beginning. This personal connection between composer and character contributed to the authentic emotional weight of the film's most significant character moments. The score also incorporated musical elements from other MCU films. The film also used the Ant-Man, 2015, theme by Christoph Beck, the Doctor Strange, 2016, theme by Michael Giacchino, and the Captain Marvel theme by Pinar Toprak. This musical integration reflected the film's role as a culmination of the entire MCU narrative. Popular music also played an important role in this film's emotional landscape. The songs Come and Get Your Love by Redbone and It's Been a Long Time by Jewel Stein and Sammy Cahn were also used after previously being heard in Guardians of the Galaxy and Captain America: The Winter Soldier, 2014, respectively. These musical callbacks created additional layers of emotional resonance for audiences familiar with the broader MCU continuity. A video for the track Portals, composed for the climactic Avengers Assemble scene in which reinforcements arrive for the Avengers, was released on June 13. This piece became one of the most celebrated musical moments in the MCU, perfectly capturing the emotional catharsis of the film's climactic battle. The theatrical release of Avengers: Endgame was carefully orchestrated to maximize both commercial impact and audience satisfaction. The marketing campaign leading up to the release was unprecedented in scale and sophistication. The marketing campaign for Endgame cost over $200 million, the most for any Marvel Studios film. This massive investment reflected both the commercial expectations for the film and the complexity of marketing such a significant cultural event. Promotional partners included Stand Up to Cancer, MasterCard, Ulta Beauty, the Audi e-tron GT concept car, which appears in this film, McDonald's, Geico, Coca-Cola, Google, General Mills, Hertz, Ziploc, Oppo, and Synchrony Financial. The breadth of corporate partnerships demonstrated the film's crossover appeal and commercial significance beyond traditional entertainment industry boundaries. Marketing strategy required careful balance between generating excitement and avoiding spoilers. Feige said in June 2018 that the dead characters would not be featured in the film's marketing. This decision reflected the filmmakers' commitment to preserving the narrative surprises that were essential to the film's emotional impact. The first trailer for the film was released on December 7, 2018. The trailer's release marked the beginning of an unprecedented period of fan anticipation and media coverage. The trailer was viewed 289 million times in its first 24 hours and was the most viewed trailer in that time period, surpassing the record of Avengers: Infinity War, 230 million views. It set a record for a Twitter conversation for a film trailer in the first 24 hours, generating 549,000 mentions. These record-breaking numbers demonstrated the extraordinary level of public interest in the film. The second trailer for the film and its theatrical release poster were released on March 14, 2019. This second marketing push maintained momentum while revealing additional plot details to sustain audience engagement. The second trailer was viewed 268 million times in the first 24 hours, becoming the second most viewed trailer in that time period, behind the first trailer. The sustained high level of interest demonstrated the effectiveness of the marketing campaign's pacing and content strategy. The premiere event was designed to match the film's significance. Avengers: Endgame had its world premiere at the Los Angeles Convention Center on April 22, 2019. Disney converted the convention center's Hall K for the film's premiere, working with Dolby and QSC Audio to install a 70-foot, 21-meter screen, Dolby Vision projectors, and a Dolby Atmos sound system. This technical sophistication ensured that the premiere audience experienced the film under optimal conditions. The global release schedule was carefully coordinated to maximize opening weekend performance. The film was released in Australia, China, and other parts of Asia and Europe on April 24, in the United Kingdom on April 25, in the United States and India on April 26, and in Russia on April 29 in IMAX and 3D. This staggered release allowed for optimal marketing coordination across different time zones and markets. Ticket pre-sales demonstrated unprecedented demand. Due to high demand when pre-sale tickets became available in the U.S. on April 2, 2019, customers on Atom Tickets and Fandango experienced long wait times and system delays. AMC Theaters' website and app crashed for several hours. These technical problems actually served as additional marketing, demonstrating the extraordinary level of public demand for the film. Fandango announced that day that the film was its top-selling pre-sale title for the first 24 hours, breaking Star Wars: The Force Awakens' record in 6 hours. The rapid breaking of established records indicated that Endgame was achieving unprecedented levels of commercial anticipation. International pre-sales were equally impressive. In China, pre-sale tickets became available on April 12. The record 1 million were sold in 6 hours, surpassing Infinity War's first 24 hours total in the first hour and earning $114.5 million, RMB 770 million, in pre-sales. These numbers demonstrated the film's global appeal and the effectiveness of Marvel's international marketing strategies. The film played in 4,662 theaters, 410 of which were in IMAX. It was the widest release ever, surpassing the record of Despicable Me 3's 2017, 4,529 theaters. This extensive release ensured maximum accessibility for audiences while optimizing revenue potential. A post-release enhancement extended the theatrical experience. In June, Fiji announced that Avengers: Endgame would be re-released in theaters with 7 minutes of new post-credits footage, which included a Stan Lee tribute, an unfinished deleted scene, and the opening scene of Far From Home. This re-release strategy provided additional revenue opportunities while giving fans additional reasons to return to theaters. Home media. The home media release strategy for Avengers: Endgame was designed to maintain the film's commercial momentum while providing audiences with enhanced viewing experiences. The film was released for digital download by Walt Disney Studios Home Entertainment on July 30, 2019, and on Ultra HD Blu-ray, and DVD on August 13. This multi-format approach ensured accessibility across different viewing preferences and technological capabilities. The digital and Blu-ray releases include behind-the-scenes featurettes, audio commentary, deleted scenes, and a blooper reel. These supplementary materials provided additional value for home viewers while offering insights into the film's creation process. Technical specifications for home viewing required compromise with the theatrical experience. Despite being filmed with IMAX cameras and released in IMAX theaters in the 1.90:1 aspect ratio, the home media release has the cropped 2.39:1 aspect ratio version used for non-IMAX screenings. This technical limitation reflected the challenges of translating large-format theatrical experiences to home viewing environments. The IMAX-enhanced version of the film was made available on Disney Plus on November 12, 2021. Eventually providing home viewers with access to the complete visual experience that had been available in IMAX theaters. Streaming distribution followed Disney's broader strategy of leveraging its proprietary platform. Streaming became exclusive to Disney Plus on November 12, 2021. This exclusivity supported Disney's direct-to-consumer strategy while providing significant value to Disney Plus subscribers. Home media sales performance demonstrated continued commercial strength. It turned $107.8 million from DVD and Blu-ray sales in the U.S. These numbers indicated that audiences remained interested in owning physical copies despite the availability of streaming options. Reception. Box office. The box office performance of Avengers: Endgame shattered virtually every existing record and established new benchmarks for commercial success in the film industry. Avengers: Endgame grossed $858.4 million in the United States and Canada and $1.941 billion in other territories for a worldwide total of $2.799 billion. These unprecedented numbers reflected both the quality of the film and the successful culmination of Marvel Studios' long-term strategy. It was the highest-grossing film of all time until it was surpassed by Avatar, 2009. Due to the 2021 re-release in China, and was the second highest grossing film of all time in the United States and Canada. The temporary achievement of the all-time global record demonstrated the film's extraordinary commercial impact. The opening weekend performance established multiple records. The film had a worldwide opening of $1.2 billion, the biggest of all time, and nearly double Infinity War's previous record of $640 million. This opening weekend achievement indicated the unprecedented global coordination and audience enthusiasm that the film generated. It is the fastest film to reach the $1 billion and $1.5 billion marks doing so in 5 and 8 days respectively. The speed of these achievements demonstrated both the film's broad appeal and the efficiency of modern global film distribution. Avengers: Endgame earned $357.1 million in its opening weekend, breaking Infinity War's record by nearly $100 million. The domestic opening weekend performance exceeded even the most optimistic industry projections. Daily performance records were equally impressive. It set records for Friday, $157.5 million, including $60 million from Thursday night previews, Saturday, $109.3 million, and Sunday, $90.4 million, totals, and had a higher total weekend gross than the previous box office high of all films combined, $314 million. These daily records demonstrated sustained audience enthusiasm throughout the opening weekend. The film earned an average of $76,601 per theater, breaking records for highest per theater average for a nationwide release, $59,982 for The Force Awakens, and the inflation-adjusted record held by Return of the Jedi, approximately $66,400, set in 1983. The per-theater performance indicated that the film was succeeding not just through wide release but through intensive audience demand at individual locations. Sustained performance demonstrated long-term commercial strength. In its second weekend, the film made $147.4 million, the second-best second weekend ever, for a 10-day total of $621.3 million. The strong second weekend performance indicated positive word-of-mouth and repeat viewing. International performance was equally remarkable. The film earned $21.6 million over its first 4 days in Russia after a government-caused delay of its premiere. Even in markets with delayed releases, the film demonstrated strong commercial performance. In its first week, the film's top 5 largest international markets were China, $459.4 million, the United Kingdom, $68.2 million, South Korea, $60.3 million, Mexico, $48.6 million, and India, $40.9 million. The geographic diversity of strong performance demonstrated the film's truly global appeal. A week after its release, it became the highest-grossing foreign film of all time in China and India. These achievements in key international markets contributed significantly to the film's overall commercial success. The film's profitability analysis revealed a financial success beyond gross receipts. The website calculated Avengers: Endgame's final net profit as $890 million, accounting for production budgets, marketing, talent participation, and other costs. Box office grosses and home media revenue placed it first on its list of 2019's most valuable blockbusters. This net profit calculation demonstrated that the film's commercial success translated into substantial profitability for Disney and Marvel Studios. Critical response: the critical reception of Avengers: Endgame was overwhelmingly positive, with critics praising both its technical achievements and its success in providing satisfying conclusions to long-running character arcs. Review aggregator Rotten Tomatoes reported an approval rating of 94%, with an average score of 8.2 based on 557 reviews. The website's critical consensus reads, "Exciting, entertaining, and emotionally impactful, Avengers: Endgame does whatever it takes to deliver a satisfying finale to Marvel's epic Infinity Saga." Metacritic, which uses a weighted average, gave the film a score of 78 out of 100 based on 57 critics, indicating generally favorable reviews. The strong critical consensus indicated that the film succeeded not just commercially but artistically. Audience response was equally enthusiastic. Audiences polled by CinemaScore gave the film an A+ grade on an A+ to F scale, the third Marvel film to receive the grade after The Avengers and Black Panther, 2018. The A+ CinemaScore represented the highest possible audience approval rating. Professional critics praised various aspects of the film's achievement. Writing for NPR, Glenn Weldon gave the film a positive review and found it a worthy sequel to its predecessor. The Russo's decision to stick close to the experiences of the remaining Avengers proves a rewarding one. as they've expressly constructed the film as an extended victory lap for the Marvel Cinematic Universe writ large. In his Rolling Stone review, Peter Travers gave the film 4 stars out of 5. You don't have to make jokes about the cliché tilde copyright time travel plot. The film is ready, willing and able to make its own, with Back to the Future coming in for a serious ribbing. Critics appreciated the film's self-awareness and humor alongside its dramatic achievements. Peter Debreuge of Variety wrote, after the must-see showdown that was Infinity War, the Russo brothers deliver a more fan-facing 3-hour follow-up, rewarding loyalty to Marvel Cinematic Universe. Critics recognized the film's success in rewarding longtime fans while remaining accessible to general audiences. Character performance received particular critical attention. Todd McCarthy of The Hollywood Reporter said, "W. comes across most strongly here, oddly enough for an effects-driven comic book-derived film, is the character acting, especially from Downey, Ruffalo, Evans, Hemsworth, Brolin, and Paul Rudd." Critics praised the film's success in balancing spectacular action with genuine character development. Richard Roper, writing for the Chicago Sun-Times, gave the film 4 stars and praised its emotional punch and the funny, well-paced, smart, expertly rendered screenplay by Christopher Marcus and Stephen McFeely, crisp direction from Anthony Russo and Joe Russo, and universally stellar performances. Some critics offered more measured praise. The New York Times reviewer Ray O. Scott gave the film a positive but guarded review. Endgame is a monument to adequacy, a fitting capstone to an enterprise that figured out how to be good enough for enough people enough of the time. Even critical reservations acknowledged the film's achievement in satisfying audience expectations. Critics also praised the film's improvement over its predecessor. Some called the film a notable improvement over its predecessor, Avengers: Infinity War, including Brian Tallarico of RogerRabbit.com. Endgame is a more patient, focused film than Infinity War, even as its plot draws in elements of a dozen other movies. The emotional resonance of the film received widespread critical recognition. Justin Chang of the Los Angeles Times wrote that Avengers: Endgame achieves and earns its climactic surge of feeling, even as it falls just short of real catharsis. Critics appreciated the film's emotional ambition even when expressing reservations about its complete success. Cultural impact and legacy. Beyond its commercial and critical success, Avengers: Endgame achieved remarkable cultural significance, becoming a shared experience that transcended typical entertainment boundaries. The film's impact extended beyond cinema into broader cultural conversations about heroism, sacrifice, and the power of collaborative storytelling. The film's achievement in bringing together storylines and characters from across more than 20 previous films represented an unprecedented accomplishment in franchise filmmaking. This success established new possibilities for long-form storytelling across multiple films while demonstrating the commercial viability of patient, character-driven narrative development. The technical achievements of the film, particularly in visual effects and large-scale action choreography, established new industry standards for blockbuster filmmaking. The seamless integration of practical and digital effects created immersive experiences that pushed the boundaries of what audiences expected from theatrical entertainment. The film was nominated for Best Visual Effects at the 92nd Academy Awards, among numerous other accolades. While the Academy Award nomination represented significant recognition, the film's broader cultural impact extended far beyond traditional awards recognition. Conclusion: Avengers: Endgame represents a singular achievement in modern filmmaking, successfully conclude review. 1 You may have noticed that most Marvel Cinematic Universe (MCU) movies have been building to something. Whether they are stories that stretch out into space, travel to different continents, or are an origin tale set in the 90s, it's all been building to Avengers: Endgame in some way. Here is a satisfying sequel that rewards those who've watched the 21 blockbuster hits that have led up to this 3-hour epic, leaving those who skipped a few classes since 2008 a little confused. Anthony and Joe Russo are back at the helm, offering an inevitably epic and thrilling adventure that's sprinkled with resonating heartfelt moments, much-needed laughs, geek-out moments, and a hint at what the future holds. That's a lot to accomplish, and as they've proven in the past, the Russos do an impressive job. If you're watching the Endgame, It should mean that you've already invested in the characters that inhabit the MCU. The more of these movies that you've seen, the more you'll get out of this one. You should be coming into this sequel with not only a knowledge of who's who, but also a dying thirst to know how the surviving Avengers will undo the devastating blow from the last Avengers movie. That is, if you want to get the most out of it. The movie opens with a gut punch of a scene that establishes that the dust hasn't quite settled from last year's Infinity War, when Thanos, Josh Brolin, donned the gauntlet that housed the 6 mighty stones and proceeded to snap half the universe out of existence. Our heroes feel responsible because they failed to stop the Mad Titan at the onset of Endgame. We find them licking their wounds. The first 20 or so minutes of this story gives the remaining Avengers yet another shot at Thanos, but since the much-publicized runtime is already on our minds, we're aware that won't work out. 5 years later, the people of Earth are living out HBO's The Leftovers, still mourning the loss of friends and loved ones and trying to figure out how to live without them. We see Steve Rogers, Captain America, Chris Evans, leading a support group where civilians share how they are trying to move on. He's still in touch with Natasha Romanoff, Black Widow, Scarlett Johansson, who is seemingly the only one at Avengers headquarters, taking on a role which finds her working with the likes of Carol Danvers, Brie Larson, Nebula, a terrific Karen Gillan, and Rocket, Bradley Cooper, and James Earl Rhodes, War Machine, Don Cheadle, as they monitor the world and beyond. It also enables her to keep tabs on under-the-radar members like her friend, Clint Barton, Hawkeye, Jeremy Renner, who went rogue after the snap. While these characters are trying to move on, it's obvious they're still grieving. Hope appears in a most unexpected form when Scott Lang, Ant-Man, Paul Rudd, delivering some of his best ever work, returns from the quantum realm, making his way to the Avengers compound with an idea of how to reverse what transpired 5 years ago. As many fans have predicted, once Infinity War ended, time travel plays a major part in Endgame, and the seed of that idea comes from Scott. He figures since it only felt like 5 hours during the 5 years he was gone, there's got to be a way to use the quantum realm to skip through time and reverse what happened. Desperate to try anything, Steve and Natasha know they'll need a way to safely implement how to scientifically navigate traveling through time to retrieve the stones before Thanos can get them. This will take persuading clever minds such as Bruce Banner, Hulk, Mark Ruffalo, and Tony Stark, Iron Man, Robert Downey Jr. With some convincing, Bruce is on board, but it takes Stark's eventual involvement to make the plan work. After recruiting Hawkeye in Tokyo and a reclusive Thor, Chris Hemsworth, leaning heavily on his comic chops, from New Asgard, located off the coast of Norway, a team is formed for a time heist which 3 groups are sent off at various moments during the history of the MCU. Of course, time travel doesn't always pan out the way characters in movies hope it would. If it went smoothly, there'd be very little drama or stakes. Complications, unexpected situations and encounters are to be expected. Our heroes also don't account for the fact that Thanos is in the past as well, and there's a good chance he's looking for the same the Avengers are. Last year's Infinity War, also directed by the Russos, didn't feel like it was about much more than presenting Thanos as a viable threat to the MCU. It was a story which primarily presented the motivations and point of view for this formidable villain. But it wasn't enough for me. What was presented wasn't earned and therefore not believable, and made me wish more of his story would have been included in one of the 2 Guardians of the Galaxy movie. More satisfaction can be found if you look at how Thanos is written and portrayed in both movies, since a greater understanding of his intent can be gleaned. He may still be a delusional self-professed savior, but he's not necessarily wrong when it comes to his assessment of the universe's overindulgence of resources. Looking at both Infinity War and Endgame, it's clear Brolin is the MVP throughout. Still, the supposed deaths at the end of Infinity War felt cheap, since it was obvious characters who have sequels in the future would not remain dead. It didn't lessen the emotional drama or gravity of those losses. But I know I'm not alone when I say I couldn't feel the intended impact. While Infinity War was the fun equivalent of a comic book crossover with some cool interactions, it didn't feel like a whole story, and that's because the rest of this story would come a year later in Endgame. The first 15 or 20 minutes of Endgame, most of which aren't mentioned here since it's better to be surprised. Feel like we're still witnessing the end of Infinity War. Sure, it could have been tacked onto the end of the last movie, but it makes sense why it was included here because Endgame has more going on than Infinity War. This sequel may pick up where we left off, but one gets the sense relatively quickly that it's actually about something other than cool team-ups and awesome action sequences. There are potent themes explored throughout such as grief and survivor's guilt, as well as topics such as parenting, sacrifice and responsibility. While the inclusion of time travel is predictable, no one would have expected it to be so humorous and clever, considering the melancholy notes the last movie ended on. What would normally be considered jarring tonal shifts, screenwriters Christopher Marcus and Stephen McNeely impressively incorporate action, adventure with comedy with touching dramatic character moments laced throughout. Some may consider the first hour to be slow, a term I'm growing quite tired of, but the time that we spend with these characters during that time is not only important, it's valuable. This is a movie that remembers what makes those two jaw-sweating Avengers movies so great, which is the downtime in between the action scenes. It's also a movie that's counting on how much we care about these characters, and because of how we feel it doesn't matter if the discussions they have on screen outweighs the slam-bang action that's expected, knowing that Endgame is essentially a culmination of everything that's been developing in the past MCU movies. It's fitting that the emphasis here is on the big three, Iron Man, Captain America and Thor. Yes, there is a welcome refocus on the original 5 Avengers that we started out within 2012's Marvel's Avengers. Thankfully, the all-powerful Captain Marvel is hardly in the picture, but it's these three that get the most impacting story arcs in the past and present. In a miraculous move, Endgame also gives a nod of validation to the unnecessarily maligned Thor, The Dark World, a movie I'll always defend, which is quite a surprise. Granted, it took me a bit longer to get on board with how Hulk and Thor are presented here. It feels like they're relegated to comedy relief more so than Rudd's Ant-Man after the way they were presented in Thor, Ragnarok, but I eventually came to accept and enjoy a different look at these characters. Without a doubt, the most rewarding, entertaining, and touching moments in Endgame come from watching what our DJ and Evans get to do here. As Iron Man and Captain America, they have been and remain the head and heart of the MCU, and where their storylines wind up is appropriate, rewarding and satisfying. The two actors have always worked off each other wonderfully in these movies, and that is carried into this movie. But it's their own individual arcs that provide the most potent and emotional moments of the movie. Repeated viewings of Endgame will come solely for their storylines. At times the frenzied climatic battle in the third hour feels like a cross between the battle at Helm's Deep and the end of Ready Player One, with a dash of the Return of the King syndrome. Yet there are some applause-worthy comic book geek-out moments to be relished, and the Russos are wise to maintain crucial character moments within the chaos. Every MCU hero brought to the big screen is assembled here, and while that would typically feel overcrowded or fan service, the timing of it all is spot-on. Double-page spread fun. Characters inevitably reunite and reconnect in various ways that will elicit audible cheers and tears of joy. There is an undeniable overall payoff to Endgame with its enjoyable self-referential sequences and surprising humor throughout. With its thrills, charm and well-earned heartbreak, this epitaph to 11 years of MCU movies offers bittersweet closure, while making way for an expected future slate of movies. Review. 2 Seeing Tony Stark make a suit out of metal scraps seems like a long time ago, doesn't it? Since 2008, our supreme overlords at Disney, with a little help from Paramount and the beginning, have bestowed 22 interconnected films upon us. Some have been pretty great, others a broken bar not so much. But no matter what comes next, Avengers, Endgame is certainly a grand culmination, one that is largely unparalleled. Even Infinity War feels small by comparison. Regardless of this review or my inner cynic that wishes to do nothing but watch movies like Diane for the rest of my time on this earth, that feels rewarding to be a part of such a massive cultural event. The following review will be spoiler-free. Don't worry, I really mean it. Synopsis. Directed by Anthony and Joe Russo. Written by Christopher Marcus and Stephen McFeely. Starring Robert Downey Jr., Chris Evans, Mark Ruffalo, Chris Hemsworth, Scarlett Johansson, Jeremy Renner, Don Cheadle, Paul Rudd, Brie Larson, Karen Gillan, Josh Brolin, and many, many more. In the wake of Thanos' snap, the surviving members of the Avengers and the rest of the world are in a state of complete disrepair. Individuals cope with the loss of their loved ones, and all seems broken in the rubble that the Mad Titan left behind. But with a bit of luck, the Avengers devise a plan that may bring everyone and everything back. Geez, writing a synopsis is tough when you're trying to keep everything as vague as possible. Look how far we've come, whether you like it or not. The MCU has fundamentally changed blockbuster filmmaking for good. Think about it. The most ambitious superhero flick before the start of the MCU was probably X2 in 2003, that is if your main signifier of ambition is the amount of central characters in the film. X2, like so many other superhero movies from the early aughts, seems unbelievably quaint and tame by today's standards. Clearly, Kevin Feige and company opened up Pandora's box. There's no going back. The Avengers are the gold standard for scope and pure epicness. I honestly have no idea where we go from here. Do superhero movies become more experimental? Do they follow the path of westerns from decades ago, with each film becoming a revisionist superhero movie? Do they become bigger, like Doctor Strange seeing the 14,605 possible scenarios before the climax of Infinity War? There's only one true path in the end, but we probably never expected that one. Ultimate destiny to have such limitless possibilities. Endgame is truly the end of a lot of things, but it may not be that crazy to say we're just getting started. Who knows? Maybe a 2030 superhero movie makes Endgame look like a cute little indie. Throw everything at the wall and see what sticks, even more so than Infinity War. Avengers Endgame is the cinematic equivalent of dumping one's entire chest of action figures onto the floor and smashing them all together, in both a good and a bad way. The bad is that the film has the tendency to feel overstuffed, but the good amounts to the most holy shit moments in a blockbuster that I can ever recall. Seriously, there are a few moments in this film that may cause a few overeager fans to soil themselves from excitement. It's movies like Avengers Endgame that make me appreciate going to the movies in 2019. There is literally no experience like it. Seeing a movie of unparalleled scope on a massive screen in a crowded theater is the communal experience we hardly get anymore, and it's one that I will always welcome with open arms. I'm sure many would love that this feeling bleed over into other, different films, me included. But there's simply no questioning the type of impact that Endgame has. It's such a cliché tilde copyright to rebrand a film as an event nowadays, much like how trite it is to joke about having to pee during Endgame, but the 22nd MCU movie deserves this designation. It's the biggest, baddest, and most insane event of them all. The Russo brothers have deserved a nice break after filming Infinity War and Endgame back-to-back. It hurts my brain to think of all the logistics that must have gone into creating this 3-hour behemoth. The fact that this movie works at all is a marvel, pun intended. True satisfaction. Dull imitations of writing a review bereft of spoilers is clear in the case of Avengers Endgame. Much like what many fans are seeing with the parallel culmination of Game of Thrones, one must dive deep into the plot points and crucial moments of the product to truly drive home their perspective to those that wish to hear or read it. But I can say this, Endgame is unquestionably satisfying. That's the term you'll hear most in conjunction with this movie. After almost 11 years of building, it would take something absolutely monumental to bring it all home and satiate Marvel diehards. It's as epic as you would have hoped. Not only are there no post-credit scenes for the first time in the history of the MCU, there is a true sense of finality to the event shown. Obviously, there will be more. Disney and Marvel Studios will make superheroes movies until the sun engulfs this planet. On that day we will surely need the Infinity Stones to fix any calamity, rendering any talk of Endgame being the last of its kind fairly pointless. But careers of our most beloved actors and creatives evolve, and so too must our most beloved properties. Surely, the MCU will never be the same again. Endgame is very, very messy. I've grown to thoroughly enjoy Infinity War since its release approximately a year ago. It wasn't until a bit after I completed my initial review of the film that I fully bought into one excruciatingly important idea: these event films are unlike anything else in the marketplace. Endgame falls more so into this line of thinking. Expecting a tight, three-act structure or airtight logic from a movie that has this much to it is silly, quite frankly. Having said this, you should still expect a certain narrative flow and maximum emotion from each scene. Avengers: Endgame struggles with idea at times. Sometimes, it's almost unbearable. Tones can shift wildly from vignette to vignette, eliciting far more confusion than empathy or tears. The first 10 minutes are damn near flawless, packing all the emotion and weight you would expect from a movie of this magnitude, with the fallout from the last film being that literally half of humanity floated off like sand in a gentle breeze. These great actors actually get the chance to act for a change. Then Endgame quickly devolves into something out of a bad SNL skit for long stretches, ruining any emotion that could be taken from a moment with that patented, increasingly frustrating sense of humor that all these films must has, even when a scene does not call for it at all. Combined with fanservice overload at times, many scenes are essentially worthless in the grand scheme of it all. Some are even sloppily composed, which further hampers the final product. Avengers: Endgame is the perfect chapter skip movie. When it hits its highs, it reaches up and touches the stratosphere, and when it falters, I struggle to find any added benefit to the overall story. Final thoughts: I think one of my tweets just about sums up everything you need to know about Avengers: Endgame. Endgame wins the award for the movie that has the most movie in movie history. A broken bar movie ain't a kush. At Gush 42, April 26, 2019. Endgame is wall-to-wall fanservice for 3 hours, which will be a perfect finish to the stage of the MCU for literally millions of moviegoers. While watching some of Endgame's more fanservice-centric moments that find a way to stick the landing, it was impossible not to feel an effervescent sense of giddiness. There are extended sequences that simply don't work for me, but I know that Marvel fans are going to lose their goddamn minds over just about everything in this movie. I can't wait to be a part of the conversation. Ultimately, this is a satisfying experience, and one of the most impressive balancing acts in movie history. Grade B. Thanks for reading. What are your thoughts on the Avengers: Endgame? Comment down below. If you enjoyed this article, subscribe to Movie Babble via email to stay up to date on the latest content. Join Movie Babble on Patreon so that new content will always be possible. What movie topic should I discuss next? Whether it be old or new, the choice is up to you. Review.3. With over a decade of very successful Marvel movies, the end of an era has finally come. Endgame is by far one of the most anticipated movies of all time, and for a very good reason. The end of Infinity War saw half the universe decimated by the snap, with Thanos retreating to an unknown location. With Tony Stark and Nebula stranded in space and no knowledge of Thanos' whereabouts, the remaining Avengers are totally lost as to what their next steps should be. With the introduction of Captain Marvel, however, the team has renewed hope in the fight against Thanos. What follows is a hilarious and action-packed film with an ending that is heartwarming and inspiring but will make literally everybody cry. One of the best things about Endgame is how engaging the plotline is despite the movie being over 3 hours long. Each scene moves relatively quickly and is packed with lots of information that move the plot along, and there was never a dull moment, especially with the introduction of time travel in this movie. There are many callbacks to characters from previous movies and some that were killed in the snap. While a lot of the time travel scenes are very funny due to the main characters trying to avoid creating paradoxes, they are equally emotional and offer closure to characters who get to see people who are dead in present day. With everything that happened in this movie, it is easily Marvel and the Russo brothers' most ambitious task yet, but they were able to intricately weave a dozen different stories together to make this masterpiece of a movie that kept the audience on the edges of their seats for the duration of the movie. The suspense in this movie was also enough to make everyone forget how badly they needed to use the bathroom for 3 hours. Like every Marvel movie, Endgame was packed full of jokes and funny moments. Even though nearly every audience member left the theater in tears, there were just as many laughs. Endgame was also beautifully shot and edited with poignant scenes that can easily rival Thor, Ragnarok and Black Panther. As mentioned above, Endgame was by far more emotional than any previous Marvel film. Even for moviegoers who aren't Marvel fans, every person who went to see the movie knew what was at stake. The endgame strategy in the game of chess means to sacrifice the most important pieces to ultimately win. So needless to say, this movie caused everyone a lot of stress. The climax of Endgame saw the Avengers' final battle against Thanos. This had the highest stakes of any previous battle because it was quite literally their last chance to stop Thanos and reverse his actions. There were points in the battle that made my heart stop, and there were many more points that made me cheer out of sheer joy. This battle is inspiring yet heartbreaking, and it ends in a way that nobody was prepared for but many people expected. The ending of this movie was very hard to accept, especially if you have been a fan of Marvel since the beginning. A send-off for some of the characters that sparked our love of superhero movies was not the ending that anyone really wanted to experience, but it was the satisfying end of the first era of Marvel. Many tissues were passed around, and it was generally agreed upon that Endgame was simultaneously the best and most painful movie that audiences have ever seen. Avengers: Endgame gets a 10/10ths review. For how do you follow Avengers: Infinity War, 2018, a film sold as the culmination of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, MCU, which unexpectedly left the door open for round 2. Well, you go small literally. The majority of Avengers: Endgame is a more intimate and focused piece of work than its predecessor, which stands to reason, considering half the universe was wiped out at the end of Infinity War. There are now fewer pieces on the metaphorical chessboard, so Endgame has to conclude the story with the original Avengers assembling for a time heist. Avengers: Endgame, Hereafter Endgame, is impossible to review without spoiling something. The marketing's done an uncharacteristically excellent job keeping its secrets, so a smidgen of information is a klaxon for spoiler-adverse fans. With that in mind, tread very carefully, but the assumption is you'll be reading this after seeing it, which is highly recommended. The first third of Endgame subverts many expectations, beyond the fact the surviving characters of Thanos, Josh Brolin, a snapping half of every living creature out of existence, are licking their wounds. Clint Barton, Hawkeye, Jeremy Renner, lost his entire family, making him the Nora Durst of this leftovers situation. Steve Rogers, Captain America, Chris Evans, sits in on support groups for those left behind and suffering from PTSD. Natasha Romanoff, Black Widow, Scarlett Johansson, has become a focal point for the remaining Avengers and let her roots grow out. Tony Stark, Iron Man, Robert Downey Jr., is marooned in deep space with Blue Meanie Nebula, Karen Gillan, and low oxygen reserves. And Scott Lang, Ant-Man, Paul Rudd, was indeed spared disintegration because he was trapped in the quantum realm. See, Ant-Man and the Wasp, so arrives home with a crazy plan to use that microscopic universe to travel through time and steal the Infinity Stones before Thanos collects them. I don't think it's too much of a spoiler to say the Avengers eventually reunite behind this bold plan, intending to do whatever it takes to change history, and the movie lovingly revisits iconic moments from the MCU. Back to the Future 2 style. The surprising thing about Endgame is that it's surprisingly low-key for long stretches. That's understandable because the characters are grieving over a colossal defeat, but early on the story takes a left turn that sucks more air from its own sails. It then becomes a peculiar blockbuster, with a few divisive creative decisions that don't get undone, particularly in respect of how Thor, Chris Hemsworth, and Bruce Banner, Hulk, Mark Ruffalo, have been physically and mentally changed by the snap. Infinity War offered audiences a fantastic balance between snarky humor, breathless action, and robust drama. A broken bar, but Endgame doesn't handle things as evenly. The drama is still definitely there, but it's on a somber footing because the writers can't treat the loss of trillions with too much lightness. The quippy humor is intact, but not as many jokes land perfectly, and a few of the areas being mined for comedy get tiring, and not least the frustrating way people keep treating Ant-Man with zero respect. The action is epic and gorgeously stitched together by legions of unsung VFX artists, but it's more backloaded than Infinity War's ebb and flow of set pieces. And, while one's gargantuan in scope, not many of the brawls are as memorable as that smaller-scale grapple trying to pin Thanos down on Titan. Fortunately, many of the emotional highs in Endgame are paying off things set up by Infinity War, or ending years-long arcs of major characters, so it can certainly be argued the peaks of Endgame are much higher. What works about Endgame is that it lives up to its title because this is certainly the end of the MCU as we've known it. Things will be markedly different going forward, so Endgame may come to be seen as the end of the MCU's golden age. Who knows if it's all downhill from here, but with ascensions for Falcon, Anthony Mackie, and Valkyrie, Tessa Thompson, plus a character in aloof Captain Marvel, Brie Larson, still causing problems due to her apparent invincibility, it's going to be a different place. Comic books always evolve the narrative and have different characters assume the mantle of various superheroes, but comics can hit restart and embrace the classic formula whenever they like. I'm insanely curious where the MCU will be in another decade when the original characters have all died in battle, the actors too old to continue, or their titles now belong to a younger protege. Will casual filmgoers accept second or third generation hand-me-downs, or will Marvel have to grudgingly hit the reset button and find a way to recast? In terms of performances, it's a welcome surprise that the standouts are Scarlett Johansson and Karen Gillan, as both their characters get the most interesting material to chew on. Everyone else is as good as one expects them to be after so long in these roles, although it's a surprise to find newest star Larson booted around as Captain Marvel, with the writing generally making her seem arrogant and conceited. There are also a lot of unexpected cameos, not least the final one by Marvel legend Stan Lee, that will have fans of the MCU, and Community, whooping in delight. Avenger, Endgame was always going to present a difficult challenge, as Infinity War was so warmly embraced and exciting for fans of these interconnected films. And it goes in a different tonal direction, for the most part, being more of a look at these superheroes in their middle age finding unexpected closure with dead parents, longing for a normal life and family, finding the wisdom of age to achieve balance with your angrier impulses, and even the loss of one's youthful physique into stomach flab. Endgame doesn't blow the final whistle on a disappointing climax, but some of the play is questionable and could frustrate those expecting Infinity War's energy and hilarity. However, while one might not agree with where the journey stops off along the way, Endgame leads to an invigorating and bittersweet way to close the Infinity Saga and look to a new beginning. Cast crew directors, Anthony Russo Joe Russo. Writers, Christopher Marcus Stephen McFeely, based on The Avengers by Stanley Jack Kirby. Starring, Robert Downey Jr., Chris Evans, Mark Ruffalo, Chris Hemsworth, Scarlett Johansson, Jeremy Renner, Don Cheadle, Paul Rudd, Brie Larson, Karen Gillan, Donna Guerrera, Bradley Cooper, Josh Brolin. Review. 5 After the devastating events of Avengers, Infinity War, the universe is in ruins. With the help of remaining allies, the Avengers assemble once more in order to undo Thanos' actions and restore order to the universe. Dread it, run from it. Destiny arrives all the same. And now it's here. Those lines were spoken by Thanos in his Infinity War introduction, signaling an ominous time ahead for the Avengers and fans of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Those words came to pass in a startlingly dramatic way as Thanos wiped out half of all life in the universe, including a great number of the Avengers. Those words still hold true in Avengers. Endgame, as the now 22-movie franchise, delivers a sense of finality to audiences as Earth's mightiest heroes are left picking up the pieces of their defeat in an attempt to correct Thanos' actions. The Russo brothers have made a captivating film that doesn't lose sight of its characters by placing them and their journeys at the heart of the story, concluding some of the biggest arcs in the MCU while offering crazy moments comic book fans expect out of a story like this. Despite Endgame being a direct continuation of Infinity War, it's surprising just how different both films feel. Whereas Infinity War was a gigantic crossover that hopped across the galaxy on an edge-of-your-seat adventure, Endgame is instead a very somber affair. The first 30 minutes alone are quiet, taking the necessary time for this new world and the scope of the Avengers' defeat to sink in. Surprisingly, there was actually very little action throughout the first half of the film as the Russos focus on the complex feelings Iron Man, Captain America, Black Widow and the others have in their very different coping methods post-snap. Endgame dedicates itself to examining its characters and how they have evolved during the 11 years of the MCU. Particularly in the case of Tony and Steve, the emotional weight throughout the film is well-earned and very heartfelt, especially for fans who have stuck through the franchise for years. By now it's no surprise the assembled, no pun intended, cast is great together. Particularly Robert Downey Jr. and Chris Evans as Tony as Steve respectively. Both give their all to the emotional depth of the story, especially in the first and third acts of the film. Jeremy Renner also stands out as Hawkeye is given a fairly significant arc in this film after suffering a huge loss due to the snap. Renner definitely displays the pain and resignment Hawkeye goes through very well while Scarlett Johansson gives her best performance in the MCU as Black Widow picks up the slack Tony and Cap leave behind on the team. Chris Hemsworth also shows Thor at his most vulnerable, giving a very different take on the character than what we've seen after everything he's gone through. Josh Brolin is again a scene stealer as Thanos, except this time around he gets to play with the much more villainous side to the galactic despot than the noble zealot who believes he has to make the hard choices. It's an interesting shift in perspectives of the character, but one that is both satisfying and a great foil to the Avengers, with Endgame being the longest MCU film to date, clocking in at just over 3 hours, including credits. The pacing works pretty well for the most part and has an engaging enough story that you don't notice the time's length too much. The slow burn of the film's first act works to set the new status quo and how all the heroes deal with the snap, but once things get going after that it doesn't entirely stop. The Russos find some fairly inventive ways to move the plot along and conjure up some entertaining sequences that haven't really been seen in the MCU before. There are a couple moments, though, where the film's pacing is slightly impacted for a good chunk of time about halfway through the film that slows it down just enough to almost be unnecessary as it doesn't really add much to the plot or the characters' emotional arcs. The ending itself also isn't rushed exactly, but there are some lingering questions that aren't completely answered. The trade-off is some excellent and moving focus on the characters, but fans might be left with some questions regarding certain players that aren't revealed. One of the elements the MCU has been known for, perhaps the most, is how funny most of the films can be. While there are jokes throughout the film, Endgame follows suit with Infinity War by striking a very good balance between the comedic and serious elements of the story. Endgame doesn't lose sight of the tragedy that has befallen the world and treats it seriously, even when some characters attempt to hide their pain with laughter. As the culmination of the MCU, there is plenty of emotion to be had, especially in the second half of the film as journeys come to an end. The investment audiences have had with these characters is well paid off and the Russos don't pull any punches with the emotional weight. By the film's conclusion, there are a lot of feelings to unpack and process. Avengers Endgame boasts some of the MCU's best visuals to date. It looks like a comic book brought to life with some gorgeous shots, particularly in the climax. There is a lot going on with the action, but it doesn't overload the senses and is presented in a pretty clear manner that's easy to follow and tell who is who. Even when there is no fighting on screen, the cinematography is well utilized during all the grieving, discussing and plotting the Avengers do before setting off on their mission. There are also some great tracking shots employed, one during the climactic battle and another that is both emotionally heavy and shows just how far this franchise has come in the 11 years since it began. It's no question Endgame is perhaps the best-looking MCU film with its outstanding visuals and vibrant color palette. Audiences who have been along for the ride will find it easy to connect with the plot and character arcs of Avengers Endgame. While it may not be quite as exciting as its predecessor, the Russo brothers made a more than worthy follow-up and conclusion to the MCU's Infinity Saga. None of the characters are lost in the shuffle and their emotions are given prominence over the spectacle. Downey, Evans, Johansson and Hemsworth give great performances that cap off their journeys, while the rest of the cast are equally as great in their roles. Even with a couple points that slow down the story a bit too much, Endgame is a rousing success that will have fans happy. It's bittersweet to see this part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe end, but it does so meaningfully and endearingly while examining what it is that has made the Avengers so special. Review. 6 How can the remaining heroes overcome the cosmic defeat by Thanos that concluded the previous Avengers film? Avengers: Infinity Wars. When the power-mad villain gained possession of all 6 of the powerful Infinity Stones, half the population of the universe was wiped out, as well as numerous superheroes. And will some or all of the latter who were killed or disintegrated be brought back to life somehow by those who survived? I must admit, those questions have not haunted me this past year, but I am well aware that for millions of McFans those have been discussed during the time leading up to the new movie's release. Having seen this new epic, penned by Christopher Marcus and Stephen McFeely and directed by brothers Joe and Anthony Russo, I can say that it is answered in a spectacular way. I didn't always understand what was going on, especially during the time travel mumbo-jumbo talk, and there were moments when a somewhat familiar face reappeared, when I wondered, now who is this? There are so darn many superheroes conjured up by T.H.R. Mc writers in the 22 film series. However, I was always thrilled and, on numerous occasions, touched by the quiet moments when we were shown the humanity beneath the superhero. I won't try to go into the complicated, sometimes verging on the ridiculous, plot, but the characters and their interactions are compelling. And there are the expected instances of the Marvel humor, such as the following exchange when Captain America rejoins the group: "Steve Rogers, you know, I saw a pod of whales when I was coming in, over the bridge." Natasha Romanoff, "In the Hudson." Steve Rogers, "Fewer ships, cleaner water." Broken bar. Natasha Romanoff, "You know, if you're about to tell me to look on the bright side, I'm about to hit you in the head with a peanut butter sandwich." Steve Rogers, "Sorry, force of habit." Then there's those incredible special effects. When I was a zealous science fiction fan in the 50s, I loved the covers of such magazines as Amazing Stories that colorfully depicted huge machines and spaceships and futuristic cities teeming with flying cars and such. By comparison, most Hollywood films then with their crude special effects were disappointing, but no longer. Thanks to computers, the special effects are awesome, with the final battle scenes of ships, hideous monsters and thousands of warriors rushing at each other. And yet there have been so many such fights in which heroes and villains pound and hurl each other all over the place that I sometimes felt a sense of déjà vu. After watching our heroes and villains get back up so often after falling from a great height or hurtling through windows and walls with scarcely a scratch, I find myself longing for a realistic film. The 22 films in this series all pay homage to brute force, with Thor's mighty hammer being a good symbol of this underlying philosophy. Although the films do espouse a lot of good values, a love of family, friendship, loyalty, courage, even self-sacrifice, the foundational value is redemptive violence. It's a brute force universe out there, and if there are any other gods besides Thor, they too believe that violence is the best way to fight evil. Can you imagine Gandhi watching this film for more than 5 minutes? The very name Avenger would raise his hackles. So, I admit to enjoying the film, but still believe that 1,000 of these films are not worth one if Beale Street could talk or Hacksaw Ridge. Of course, I know I am in a minority. There are predictions that this epic will be the first to take in $1 billion this first weekend. If you need a primer on the Avenger characters, click here. https://marvelcinematicsuniverse.fandom.com/wiki/category Avengers:\Endgame_characters. Review. 7 Avengers: Endgame, 2019. Directed by Anthony and Joe Russo. Starring Robert Downey Jr., Chris Evans, Mark Ruffalo, Chris Hemsworth, Scarlett Johansson, Jeremy Renner, Don Cheadle, Paul Rudd, Brie Larson, Karen Gillan, Danai Gurira, Bradley Cooper, and Josh Brolin. Synopsis: after the devastating events of Avengers: Infinity War, the universe is in ruins. With the help of remaining allies, The Avengers assemble once more in order to undo Thanos' actions and restore order to the universe. Dread it, run from it, destiny arrives all the same, and now it's here. Those lines were spoken by Thanos in his Infinity War introduction, signaling an ominous time ahead for the Avengers and fans of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Those words came to pass in a startlingly dramatic way as Thanos wiped out half of all life in the universe, including a great number of the Avengers. Those words still hold true in Avengers Endgame, as the now 22-movie franchise delivers a sense of finality to audiences as Earth's mightiest heroes are left picking up the pieces of their defeat and attempt to correct Thanos' actions. The Russo brothers have made a captivating film that doesn't lose sight of its characters by placing them and their journeys at the heart of the story, concluding some of the biggest arcs in the MCU while offering crazy moments comic book fans expect out of a story like this. Despite Endgame being a direct continuation of Infinity War, it's surprising just how different both films feel. Whereas Infinity War was a gigantic crossover that hopped across the galaxy on an edge-of-your-seat adventure, Endgame is instead a very somber affair. The first 30 minutes alone are quiet, taking the necessary time for this new world and the scope of the Avengers' defeat to sink in. Surprisingly, there is actually very little action throughout the first half of the film as the Russos focus on the complex feelings Iron Man, Captain America, Black Widow and the others have in their very different coping methods post-snap. Endgame dedicates itself to examining its characters and how they have evolved during the 11 years of the MCU. Particularly in the case of Tony and Steve. The emotional weight throughout the film is well-earned and very heartfelt, especially for fans who have stuck through the franchise for years. By now it's no surprise the assembled, no pun intended, cast is great together. Particularly Robert Downey Jr. and Chris Evans as Tony as Steve respectively. Both give their all to the emotional depth of the story, especially in the first and third acts of the film. Jeremy Renner also stands out as Hawkeye is given a fairly significant arc in this film after suffering a huge loss due to the snap. Renner definitely displays the pain and resignment Hawkeye goes through very well, while Scarlett Johansson gives her best performance in the MCU as Black Widow picks up the slack Tony and Cap leave behind on the team. Chris Hemsworth also shows Thor at his most vulnerable, giving a very different take on the character than what we've seen after everything he's gone through. Josh Brolin is again a scene stealer as Thanos, except this time around he gets to play with the much more villainous side to the galactic despot than the noble zealot who believes he has to make the hard choices. It's an interesting shift in perspectives of the character, but one that is both satisfying and a great foil to the Avengers, with Endgame being the longest MCU film to date, clocking in at just over 3 hours, including credits. The pacing works pretty well for the most part and has an engaging enough story that you don't notice the time's length too much. The slow burn of the film's first act works to set the new status quo and how all the heroes deal with the snap, but once things get going after that it doesn't entirely stop. The Russos find some fairly inventive ways to move the plot along and conjure up some entertaining sequences that haven't really been seen in the MCU before. There are a couple moments, though, where the film's pacing is slightly impacted for a good chunk of time about halfway through the film that slows it down just enough to almost be unnecessary as it doesn't really add much to the plot or the characters' emotional arcs. The ending itself also isn't rushed exactly, but there are some lingering questions that aren't completely answered. The trade-off is some excellent and moving focus on the characters, but fans might be left with some questions regarding certain players that aren't revealed. One of the elements the MCU has been known for, perhaps the most, is how funny most of the films can be. While there are jokes throughout the film, Endgame follows suit with Infinity War by striking a very good balance between the comedic and serious elements of the story. Endgame doesn't lose sight of the tragedy that has befallen the world and treats it seriously, even when some characters attempt to hide their pain with laughter. As the culmination of the MCU, there is plenty of emotion to be had, especially in the second half of the film as journeys come to an end. The investment audiences have had with these characters is well paid off and the Russos don't pull any punches with the emotional weight. By the film's conclusion, there are a lot of feelings to unpack and process. Avengers, Endgame boasts some of the MCU's best visuals to date. It looks like a comic book brought to life with some gorgeous shots, particularly in the climax. There is a lot going on with the action, but it doesn't overload the senses and is presented in a pretty clear manner that's easy to follow and tell who is who. Even when there is no fighting on screen, the cinematography is well utilized during all the grieving, discussing and plotting the Avengers do before setting off on their mission. There are also some great tracking shots employed, one during the climactic battle and another that is both emotionally heavy and shows just how far this franchise has come in the 11 years since it began. It's no question Endgame is perhaps the best-looking MCU film with its outstanding visuals and vibrant color palette. Audiences who have been along for the ride will find it easy to connect with the plot and character arcs of Avengers: Endgame. While it may not be quite as exciting as its predecessor, the Russo brothers made a more than worthy follow-up and conclusion to the MCU's Infinity Saga. None of the characters are lost in the shuffle and their emotions are given prominence over the spectacle. Downey, Evans, Johansson and Hemsworth give great performances that cap off their journeys while the rest of the cast are equally as great in their roles. Even with a couple points that slow down the story a bit too much, Endgame is a rousing success that will have fans happy. It's bittersweet to see this part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe end, but it does so meaningfully and endearingly while examining what it is that has made the Avengers so special. Review. 8 Filmmakers Joe and Anthony Russo were responsible for some of Marvel's biggest box office hits, from Captain America: Civil War to Avengers: Endgame. But they don't necessarily believe superhero fatigue is to blame for the studio's recent struggles. Marvel had a tough 2023 with two flops: Ant-Man and the Wasp, Quantumania and the Marvels. Speaking recently to Games Radar Plus, the director said that Marvel's current issues boil down to the changes in how people absorb media. It's a Hollywood-wide issue, not just a Marvel one. I think it's a reflection of the current state of everything. It's difficult right now, it's an interesting time, Joe Russo said. I think we're in a transitional period and people don't know quite yet how they're going to receive stories moving forward, or what kinds of stories they're going to want. There's a big generational divide about how you consume media, he continued. There's a generation that's used to appointment viewing and going to a theater on a certain date to see something, but it's aging out. Meanwhile the new generation are I want it now, I want to process it now, then moving on to the next thing, which they process whilst doing two other things at the same time. You know, it's a very different moment in time than it's ever been. And so I think everyone, including Marvel, is experiencing the same thing, this transition, and I think that really is probably what's at play more than anything else. Joe Russo noted that the new generation of moviegoers communicates largely through memes and headlines with nobody reading past 2 sentences, so everything's 100 characters or less or 10-second videos on social media you swipe through. I think that the 2-hour format, the structure that goes into making a movie, it's over a century old now and everything always transitions, he added. So, there is something happening again and that form is repetitive. But it's hard to reinvent that form and I think this next generation is looking for ways to tell their own stories that service their own sort of collective ADHD. Anthony Russo told Games Radar Plus that superhero fatigue has nothing to do with superheroes in particular, it's just fatigue in general. The superhero fatigue question was around long before the work we were doing, Anthony continued. So, it's sort of an eternal complaint, like we always used to cite this back in our early days with superhero work. People used to complain about westerns in the same way but they lasted for decades and decades and decades. They were continually reinvented and brought to new heights as they went on. As concerns about superhero fatigue continue to be discussed in the comic book movie world, the Batman villain Paul Dano recently made headlines for telling The Independent that perhaps it's a good thing. It's an interesting moment where everybody has to go like, okay, what now? Hopefully from that, somebody either breathes new life into comic book movies, or something else blossoms which is not superheroes, Dano said. I'm sure there will still be some good ones yet to come, but I think it's kind of a welcome moment. Joseph Quinn, who is joining the Marvel Cinematic Universe as Johnny Storm, Human Torch in the upcoming tentpole The Fantastic Four, recently told Entertainment Weekly that he's not too concerned about superhero fatigue as he gets ready to make his own superhero debut. "I think that with the story of the Fantastic Four, it feels like we want to get this right," Quinn said about superhero fatigue concerns. "There are aspects of it that are very different to other Marvel films that felt very compelling to me." And again, going back to who's involved, Matt Shakman, of course, the director, I think is brilliant, and the cast, and I've read it, and the script is brilliant. It's really brilliant. I'm delighted to have this opportunity. Review.9 Even at 3+ hours, the gargantuan Avengers Endgame is light on its feet and more freely inventive than it needed to be. Given the year-long wait, its audience, a Pavlovian dogs, myself, Woof, included, would have salivated over less. It's better than Avengers Infinity War, which was better than Avengers Age of Ultron, and it is, for a change, conclusive. My 16-year-old daughter regretted having put on mascara prior to the screening because, by the end, it was all over her face. Even in franchise tentpole universe land, some superheroism is finite. A spoiler-free review of such a secrecy-shrouded blockbuster would consist of a star rating, or, shudder, a grade, as well as a cautious dramatis personae, though even here there might be trouble, given that Marvel doesn't want you to know every character who'll pop up and in what context. Recounting the very premise is problematic. Beyond the hero's obvious determination to reverse disintegrate, reintegrate the 50% of the galaxy wiped out in Avengers Infinity War by the Malthusian Colossus Thanos, what form will their improbable quest take, and which characters will lead the charge? At this early stage, I must resist the temptation even to hint at momentous events. Although it was nearly 50 years ago, I remember the childhood friend who emerged from the Poseidon adventure and yelled to everyone in the long line, "Shally Winters dies." Nowadays he'd need to go into witness protection. Inevitably I'll tell you things you don't know, but promise not to tell you that Shally Winters dies. The beginning of Avengers Endgame reminds you that Marvel is run by very clever people, or at least people who know enough to hire very clever people. Tonally, they change course frequently. Avengers Infinity War ended with a noisy and tumultuous super battle, so Avengers Endgame begins with something quiet and down to earth. You could almost be watching a real movie. Clint Barton, Hawkeye, Jeremy Renner, is teaching his daughter how to line up and shoot an arrow. Tending the grill, his wife asks if they want mustard or mayonnaise on their hot dogs, and father and daughter bond over the ridiculousness of mayonnaise on a hot dog. Their little son calls for ketchup. And then Apophé Barton is alone. The music comes in so softly that you barely hear it over the flickering Marvel panels. Tony Stark, Iron Man, Robert Downey Jr., is discovered floating in a ship in space, his oxygen dwindling. His only company that reformed Blue Meanie Nebula, Karen Gillan. Downey looks gaunt, ravaged, his face finally denuded of all baby fat. I would fear for the actor's nutrition, but the credits include the name of his private chef as well as Chris Hemsworth's. I don't mean to mock the maid, though I applaud their co-stars for making do with craft services. But I'm constantly amazed by how detailed closing credits have become. A close-up of Downey lasts a while. The directors, Anthony Russo and Joe Russo, stopping time the way the makers of the last Game of Thrones installment did, mercifully forestalling the horrors to come. Earth the Law Thanos is full of fascinating contradictions that the Russos don't fully explore. For example, Tony Stark no longer lives in a high-tech fortress. He lives in the woods. He grows things. His now wife, Pepper, Gwyneth Paltrow, reads magazines about composting. Perhaps the latest iteration of Goop featuring designer worms. We're told that fewer people means fewer ships, means cleaner water. Far, far away, Thanos, Josh Brolin plus CGI, has a little farm himself. A Malthusian who believed the galaxy would be better off with a fraction of the inhabitants. He is apparently a Luddite, too. The surviving Avengers are the core group of Iron Man, Hawk, Thor, Hemsworth, Natasha, Black Widow, Scarlett Johansson, Steve Rogers, Captain America, Chris Evans, Bruce Banner, Hulk, Mark Ruffalo, James Rhodes, War Machine, Don Cheadle, plus Rocket the Space Raccoon, the wise-ass voice of Bradley Cooper, Nebula, and recent arrival Carol Danvers, Captain Marvel, Brie Larson, are discovered some time later, in mourning, serious mourning. No self-respecting superhero could live with that level of failure. The rift between Iron and Cap has gotten uglier. Beginning with Captain America, Civil War, one of them came down on the side of civil liberties and the other on the side of security at all costs. Though I keep getting mixed up which is which. Oh, now I remember, Cap is for civil liberties and Iron for security at all costs. Though this still strikes as off given that Stark is a free market inventor and Rogers a consummate soldier. Downey Stark is fed up, tired, eager to leave the field and start a family. It falls to the widow A in her mopey, desultory way to keep the Avengers going. I will always be Johansson's #1 fan, but I do miss the witty and agile widow of the first Avengers movie. Thor and Hulk are different from what you remember. Is this a spoiler? I can't tell anymore. Thor is fat, hairy, and alcoholic. The internet, taking its cue from a Stark wisecrack, has already dubbed him Lebowski Thor. This is welcome, given that the Avengers have a ramrod hero in Captain America and Hemsworth is livelier when he's self-parodic. As in the game-changing Thor, Ragnarok, the new Hulk strikes me as more problematic. Ruffalo is charming and funny and the damnedest sight, but the Hulk was born like the archetypal werewolf. Mr. Hyde from the idea that humans' dual natures cannot be reconciled. A medium-sized, rational Hulk is what all of us strive to be, really, as we learn to adopt more mature defense mechanisms. But without an internal struggle, Banner ceases to function as a dramatic character, let alone a dangerous one. The happiest surprise, that's a spoiler phrase right there, is that writers Christopher Marcus and Stephen McFeely have shaped Avengers Endgame as a time travel heist picture. The nature of the quantum realm is more sophisticated than in, say, Back to the Future, which gets arousing, Stark preferring the theories of Planck and contemporary egghead David Deutsch, but the film echoes Robert Zemeckis' farce and how characters encounter their former selves from previous films. They beat themselves up emotionally and literally, not to endorse Thanos' homicidal ideology, but fewer people in the movie means richer, more fertile scenes. Evans bears his emotional weight with eloquence, Cooper's rat-tat-tat delivery is gangbusters, Paul Rudd Scott Lang. Ant-Man has the kind of crack timing that doesn't just get laughs but moves the plot along lickety-split, and even Paltrow rises to the occasion, transcending her goopy baggage. Gillen is outright marvelous, her near monotonic grasp carrying just enough halftones to make you feel Nebula's inner struggle. Her patchwork Borg-like physiognomy the closest thing in the film to Greek mythology. This Nebula is the dramatic equal of her father, Thanos, rendered brilliant by an army of artists and sound designers. But it's Brolin who gives him the voice and soul of a philosopher gone rancid. He embodies the dark side better than many of his Star Wars counterparts. For all the hoopla of her entry, Larson's Captain Marvel brings little to the party. Perhaps, to be fair, because it's really not her party. I missed Benedict Cumberbatch's high style but not Chris Pratt's stumblebum antics. What there is of Pratt is enough. Two supporting actors return with their faces aged by computers. It works out okay for one of them, but the other is the stuff of nightmares. His head looks melted out of shape, like a Star Trek teleportation accident. There is, as you'd expect, a colossal battle sequence, but I wouldn't dream of telling you who pops up and when, except to say that the women of Marvel get a mighty, crowd-pleasing shot. I'll also say that this is the sort of war film in which the good die well and not at the hands of enemies. Leonard Nimoy's Mr. Spock would nod with approval and even find his human side stirred. In the days to come, the components of Avengers Endgame will be analyzed and its Easter eggs enumerated. Its actors will give interviews meant to seem giddily spontaneous but, to one degree or another, shaped by highly paid publicists at the behest of corporate masters. Although it will need to make room in the collective psyche for Sunday's Battle of the Dead on Game of Thrones, Avengers Endgame and the blockbuster HBO show will together reinforce the idea that mass hypnosis is possible even in our supposedly fractious and polyphonic pop culture. I regret this on many levels but am not so hypocritical as to tell you I've risen above it. I had a good time and my daughter had a great one. That said, This kind of success is always a mixed blessing. How soon before Disney stockholders will ask, when's the next huge one? I hope not for a long while. Spoiler addendum. Do not read before seeing the film. My daughter wondered about the effect of 50% of humanity returning 5 years after they've disintegrated as opposed to, well, not disintegrating in the first place. What about the people who did, indeed, move on with their lives? They have new relationships, kids, houses may be broken, bar it's bound to be an emotional shitstorm that dwarfs anything Thanos could come up with. A TV series, maybe? Review. 10 Marvel Avengers, Endgame, 2019, a movie review directed by Anthony Russo, Joe Russo, produced by Kevin Feige, screenplay Christopher Marcus and Stephen McFeely, based on The Avengers by Stanley Jack Kirby, starring Robert Downey Jr., Chris Evans, Mark Ruffalo, Chris Hemsworth, Scarlett Johansson, Jeremy Renner, Don Cheadle, Paul Rudd, Brie Larson, Karen Gillan, Danai Gurira, Bradley Cooper, Josh Brolin, and many, many more. Music by Alan Silvestri. Cinematography, Trent Opolak. Edited by Jeffrey Ford and Matthew Schmidt. Production company, Marvel Studios. Relatively spoiler-free review. So, we are finally here, assembled and ready to experience the last battle in this particular phase of Marvel films. 22 movies released over an 11-year period now culminate in the adroitly named Avengers Endgame. While they may have all the money in the multiverse backing their superhero endeavors, Marvel deserve much credit for releasing so many great films within the 11-year cycle. Yes, of course many have followed a tried and tested genre formula, however, their legion of production staff, producers, directors, writers and actors did whatever it took to entertain the public. This final film was set up perfectly by what preceded. I mean, the dust had not even settled at the end of Infinity War, and I, along with many others, were agog at the crushing defeat suffered by our heroes on Earth. At the click of Thanos' finger and thumb, Thanos had achieved the impossible and obtained the 6 Soul Stones and eradicated 50% of the population. This tragic genocide included many of the Avengers we had grown to root for, and Endgame begins where its predecessor finished. Here we find a depleted and dejected Avengers team on Earth and a barely surviving Tony Stark in space facing the abyss. Collectively they are hurting, grieving and feeling vengeful. The somber and angry tone to the opening of the film was something I was drawn to. Emotionally it made sense to, within the first hour, color the film with a slower, mournful pace and darker mood. This is encapsulated in the character of Hawkeye, who was using his special set of skills for destructive and nihilistic purposes. Similarly, Thor is twisted into a self-pitying anti-god, and this plays out with both surprise and humor. Of course, the remaining Avengers are not going to lie down for 3 hours in a reflective study of sorrow, because they want their friends and the population of Earth back, and they will do whatever it takes to achieve this goal. The middle part of the film is where the narrative really gathers pace. Once Stark, Bruce Banner and Scott Lang, Ant-Man discover a means with which to somehow alter the tragic events, we are thrown into many imaginative and entertaining set pieces. I was so pleased Paul Rudd was back as Ant-Man in a key role. He is such a likable and funny actor who always brings sharp comedy timing and warmth to his roles. Further, like Lang, Karen Gillan as Nebula, while seemingly a secondary character, plays an important role in Endgame. In more ways than one, Nebula becomes a vital cog in the intricate and multi-stranded plotting. The various Avengers, including the aforementioned and Black Widow, Captain America, War Machine and Rocket etc., all splinter to different places in order to achieve their mission. Here the film really finds a perfect pace and stride, delivering a series of brilliant action scenes. Indeed, Endgame is full of brilliant cross-cutting callbacks to the previous Marvel films, presenting a multitude of Easter egg or intertextual moments. Safe to say the action unfurls rapidly, but the writers also have the confidence to slow the pace and allow several key emotional moments for certain characters. But mostly there was action and fighting and humor and just so many memorable moments of a light and dark tone. My personal favorite was during Captain America's mission. This plot strand just sang and hit so many high notes. I am striving hard to avoid spoilers here, so all I can add is that the Marvel production team deserves so much credit for bringing this multi-stranded story home in such a thrilling fashion. I just loved the direction they took it in regard to the temporal, spatial and universal narrative choices. They assembled, pushed and pulled the formula in certain ways which surprised and kept the characters vibrant and fresh. The tonal balance was positive and only ever slightly threatened to slip into parody, mostly with Chris Hemsworth's depressed rendition of Thor. My only gripe was I felt Brie Larson's effervescent Captain Marvel was sadly underused. Unsurprisingly, the final gigantic battle sequences were expected but still delivered on a massive scale. Thanos is, and was, a mighty enemy, and the last war against him and his hordes were full of epic surprise, pulsating action and heartfelt emotion. Undeniably, it was a most spectacular and moving climax. Thus, overall, I am actually shocked at how much I enjoyed a bunch of superheroes made of computer pixels larking about on a big screen. Maybe, however, given the time, money and energy spent over the last 11 years by the filmmakers and audience alike, it was, like Thanos, inevitable. Review. 11 After 21 films, the MCU was under significant pressure to properly end its massive saga in a satisfying manner while retaining the necessities of a standalone film, writing that doesn't rely exclusively on previous material, actors who each get a decent share of screen time, and production elements that enhance the overall visuals and audio. Shockingly, Avengers: Endgame does all of these things, allowing it to take its place as one of the two greatest Marvel movies we've ever received. Don't believe me? Let's take a look. Writing note: this review will contain some spoilers. Skip the next 3 paragraphs if you want to avoid them. 5 years after Thanos has decimated half of the galaxy's population, including Earth's, the remaining Avengers are trying to pick up the pieces of everything they've lost. However, Scott Lang's return from the quantum realm gives Bruce Banner an idea: retrieving the Infinity Stones from different points in their timeline to bring everyone back from the dead. They'll need Tony Stark to do it. Meanwhile, Thanos catches on to the Avengers' plan a broken bar and has an even more bleak idea in mind this time around. Avengers: Endgame had a lot of hype to live up to. After all, Thanos has been a threat since the first Avengers film came out in 2012. Honestly, this movie surpassed my expectations by a milestone. The story, unlike Infinity Wars, is perfectly balanced with its pacing. There's plenty of excellent action sequences, dynamic character development, and tense adventure scenes. Out of all of the characters' ending arcs, 3 of the main ones are fully fleshed out and perfect for their respective characters: Captain America, Iron Man, and Thor. It's because of these 3 that the film ends in a largely satisfying way. The scale of the film is impressive, epic, and original for the most part. Dialogue is written quite well, too. The only issue with the story, then, is the number of plot holes it raises in its attempt to redefine time travel. Is the script predictable? Yes. Well, for someone like me, anyway. Does that make it less fun? Not a chance. Cast: the cast is, again, much too large to cover, so I'll focus on noteworthy performances. Let's start with the big 3, Chris Evans, Chris Hemsworth, and Robert Downey Jr. All 3 are utterly fantastic, bringing a level of realism and conviction to what could have been a handful of overly silly characters. RDJ is very theatrical, and Evans is wonderfully natural, despite being the opposite of his character, each playing well off of one another. But Hemsworth really steals the show here. He's amazingly funny, yet surprisingly endearing, too. Get Kyle Wiseman's stories in your inbox. Join Medium for free to get updates from this writer. Subscribe. Speaking of funny, Paul Rudd is quite good as Scott Lang. Rudd is mostly a comedic actor, though he certainly has his fair share of emotional moments that pack a punch, too. To say nothing of Karen Gillan as Nebula would be a crime. Keep in mind that Gillan is a Scottish actress that pulls off an American or alien cyborg, in this case a accent without a hitch. Between her dynamic abilities to emote and convey a serious tone simultaneously when delivering exposition, she was easily able to keep me engaged with the film. Now for the not so good, then you have Mark Ruffalo, Scarlett Johansson, and Jeremy Renner. None of them are particularly great actors, though I have to admit that they all have marginally improved since the last film. And yes, Don Cheadle and Benedict Wong return in this film. Unfortunately, do I really need to say it? They're both horrible actors, as far as I'm concerned. Thankfully, they're overshadowed by two excellent actors, A. Bradley Cooper and Josh Brolin. Got to end on a positive note. Cooper is by far the best Guardian in terms of acting talent, and all he essentially has to work with is his voice. As for Brolin, I don't think much needs to be said if you've seen any of his roles before. Brolin is one of the best actors of our generation, able to emote and play both a vulnerable father and a horrifying villain in Endgame. Few can match that skill. It only helps that you can easily tell that Brolin gives his all to every role he takes on. Production. Returning for the final film, the Russo brothers bring incredibly epic cinematography and impactful action sequences that have literally been unseen before. It's a powerfully evocative film that had me experience every emotion at specific points, which is a difficult feat to accomplish in a single film. I even teared up in one scene. Lighting is frequently dark, but handled well enough to never bring confusion to the viewer. Set design is immaculate, both recreating scenes from previous films with precision and crafting new ones that feature a massive scale. Costumes and makeup are also superb, highlighting how far both have come since the beginning of the MCU. Certain scenes have the characters to age, yet they still look quite authentic, not to mention the spectacular CGI. Intense sound designated Broken Bar Brolin in particular appears incredibly realistic. Action sequences are complemented by impressive sound effects and an entertaining if slightly underwhelming soundtrack. The Russo brothers clearly didn't squander the massive budget they were given. In terms of production quality, Endgame might be the best film an audience has ever gotten. Summary. I wouldn't go so far as to say that Endgame is perfect, but for a single blockbuster with a lot of history behind it, the movie delivers, and then some thanks to excellent production elements that just fit nicely together. It is likely the greatest film Marvel will ever produce. It can only go downhill from here. Review. 12. Directed by Anthony Russo, Joe Russo. Vertical bar. Produced by Kevin Feige. Screenplay by Christopher Marcus, Stephen McFeely. Vertical bar. Starring Robert Downey Jr., Chris Hemsworth, Mark Ruffalo, Chris Evans, Scarlett Johansson, Benedict Cumberbatch, Don Cheadle, Tom Holland, Chadwick Boseman, Paul Bettany, Elizabeth Olsen, Anthony Mackie, Sebastian Stan, Danai Gurira, Letitia Wright, Dave Bautista, Zoe Saldana, Josh Brolin, Chris Pratt. Music by Silvestre. Vertical bar. Cinematography, Trent Opolak. Vertical bar. Edited by Jeffrey Ford, Matthew Schmidt. Vertical bar. Country, United States. Vertical bar. Language, English. Running time, 149 minutes, 181 minutes, My feelings regarding Disney's Marvel Cinematic Universe, MCU, 2008-present, in particular, and superhero tentpole blockbusters in general are no secret. I'm not the subtlest writer, nor am I hesitant to share my blunt assessments of pop culture phenomena. With that in mind, this essay is neither about acknowledging the strengths of big, bold, FX-driven blockbusters of the 2010s, nor about bitching how forgiving both critics and the masses are in their analyses of these trendy, ubiquitous blockbusters. A broken bar. No. This review is about how the biggest, boldest, most ubiquitous superhero franchise ends, or, at least how this chapter of that franchise, the Marvel Cinematic Universe, MCU, ends. Though the final two Avengers films, Infinity War and Endgame, are their own self-contained stories, they function in the broader MCU franchise as parts 1 and 2 of the closing chapter of the series as we know it. Certain characters may continue in future installments. For example, Chris Hemsworth's Thor, while newer Avengers will carry the bulk of the franchise's weight. For example, Chadwick Boseman's Black Panther, Tom Holland's Spider-Man, the entirety of the Guardians of the Galaxy, 2014, 2016, yet the original narrative arc started by Iron Man, 2008, is finished. I can't say it wasn't an ambitious and hugely financially successful project. It may surprise you that, in hindsight at least, These films share little in common despite being directed and written by the same filmmakers. Brother directors Anthony and Joe Russo, along with screenwriters Christopher Marcus and Stephen McFeely, have been responsible for most of the best works in the MCU. For example, The Winter Soldier, 2014. They work well together, the Russos knowing how far to push the pandering CGI set pieces without going overboard, how to coax good performances from their starring cast, and having affection for more grounded, well-choreographed close-quarters combat sequences inspired by true action films like The Raid, 2011, or John Wick, 2014, 2017. McFeely and Marcus, meanwhile, know how to structure their stories with minimal blowout, tight pacing, and good dialogue with appropriate levels of wit. It's surprising, then, as I said, how Infinity War embodies the greatest of these filmmakers' strengths while Endgame, a not a bad film, by any means is one of their more underwhelming, overrated. See Captain America, Civil War, 2016, features, powered more by sentimental nostalgia than novel storytelling or notable cinematographic execution. From a screenwriting perspective, Infinity War has the tightest, most efficient script of any mainstream superhero movie I've seen since at least The Dark Knight, 2008, utilizing a massive, 19-star ensemble across 3-4 subplots over a lean, 2.5-hour running time. Its action sequences are trim, effective, well-paced, and hit both dramatic and comedic beats like Hawkeye, Jeremy Renner, hits bullseyes. Endgame, by contrast, feels its 3-hour length, succumbs to the industry-standard CGI clusterfuck spectacle by its final act, misuses its principal villain, and drags throughout its extended prologue and opening act. From a characterization and development standpoint, however, Endgame fares better with its heroes than Captain America, Steve Rogers, Chris Evans, and Iron Man, Tony Stark, Robert Downey Jr., enjoy their best chemistry yet and satisfying, emotional conclusions to their series arcs, ending the franchise on a strong note. Contrasting this, however, is how much better he handles its villainous protagonist. You read that correctly. Thanos, Josh Brolin, and various supporting characters on both sides of the good versus evil divide. Much of my disinterest in the MCU, without delving into gratuitous detail, pertains to how one-note most of its heroes are despite their actors' charismatic performances, while their villains remain forgettable, mindless obstacles. Tom Hiddleston's Loki, see The Avengers, 2012, is what passes for a strong, memorable villain for much of the series. Imagine my satisfaction, then, when it revealed itself to be an epic inverse of the standard MCU format. How the villain, Brolin, drives the story, dominates all character development, and is an imposing, formidable threat to our heroes. He is all this, mind you, without being too powerful or reducing narrative tension. In terms of overall direction, including action direction, he again best sits 2019 counterpart. Endgame is charming how it subverts various character archetypes, in-jokes, and established backstories in clever ways, including through occasional visual humor. However, these films are primarily action-based, however FX-driven that action may be, and in terms of weaving various bodies through effective CGI, intricate choreography, and sweeping camera movements, it was the MCU at its best. Much of the overarching flow of the action sequences is a function of clever editing in conjunction with McFeely and Marcus' ironclad screenplay, but every scene is well staged, well choreographed, and shockingly never overuses digital effects to swamp its main characters or the action's intensity. Even its finale is satisfying as a function of, not despite, its chaos, utilizing interesting enemy designs and behavior to maximize narrative stakes. Endgame, by contrast, completes its story with more standard fare CGI mayhem, featuring little in the way of interesting choreography or clever twists. Perhaps the simplest comparison between these final two original MCU movies is how efficiently they utilize their large ensemble casts. In this respect, there is little comparison, given how he makes better use of a larger caster and introduces a novel antagonist, Brolin's Thanos, as its narrative center in an interesting way. Endgame boasts greater developmental payoff for series favorites Downey Jr. and Evans, as I stated, but it also overemphasizes the bland Nebula, Karen Gillan, and shoehorns a less interesting version of Brolin's Thanos, think time traveler Broken Barb, and the inexplicable Captain Marvel, Brie Larson. On the other hand, wastes nobody and nothing, and executes the series' best singular ending with its best villain. Neither of these films will be compared and contrasted the way I feel all Marvel films should be, a function of general audiences and fanboys' inclination to view them more as episodic installments in a theatrical television series than individual movies. This viewpoint is understandable, but I note how each of these movies boasts a distinct three-act structure, embraces feature-length formula over, say, supersized teleplay formats, for example Game of Thrones, 2011 to 2019, lengthier episodes, and is no less producer-led or more writer-driven than the average Hollywood blockbuster. Still, Avengers, Infinity War and Endgame make a nice double feature as a function of their shared screenwriters and directors, as well as how different they turned out. Despite that, I'll be saying goodbye to mainstream comic book adaptations for the foreseeable future. Really, my following of Marvel, DC, and X-Men related properties has been declining for a while now, but these two films are as fitting as any with which to end that superhero movie binge. Summary recommendation. Infinity War affirms the Russo brothers and screenwriters Christopher Marcus and Stephen McFeely as the Marvel Cinematic Universe's best filmmakers, or at least the ones who work best under producer Kevin Feige's watch. Endgame, meanwhile, isn't as effective an argument in hindsight, but its strong conclusions to its series' two most likable characters and entertaining time-traveling antics make up for its so-so blockbuster action. A greater than Infinity War comes highly recommended, while Endgame is recommended as a satisfying follow-up. Are there any other spooky, purple space monsters? Directed by Chad Stahelski. Vertical bar produced by Basil Iwanik, Erica Lee. Screenplay by Derek Kolstad, Shay Hatton, Chris Collins, Mark Abrams. Vertical bar starring Keanu Reeves, Halle Berry, Lawrence Fishburne, Mark Dacascos, Asia Kate Dillon, Lance Reddick, Angelica Houston, Ian McShane. Music by Tyler Bates, Joel J. Richard. Vertical bar cinematography, Dan Lostson. Vertical bar edited by Evan Schiff. Vertical bar country, United States. Vertical bar language, English. Running time, 131 minutes. Upon the successful release, reception, and box office take of John Wick 2, 2017, I stated without equivocation that the American action movie was back. I stand by that assertion 2 years later, as Tom Cruise's practical stunt-based Mission Impossible, 1996, 2000, 2006, 2011, 2015, 2018, franchise grows in size and unabashed adult-oriented action features like Atomic Blonde, 2017, helmed by John Wick, 2014, uncredited co-director, David Leitch, and Fury Road, 2015, an Australian co-production, become commonplace. Even multiple high-profile entries in popular, mainstream superhero franchises. Properties notorious for their over-reliance on bloated digital effects, censored violence, and family-friendly spectacle. Turn to the dark side with successful outings like Deadpool, 2016, 2018, and Logan, 2017. As more and more violent entertainment transitions to streaming services, some of my faith in humanity is restored upon seeing so many people willing to tolerate the overpriced, inconvenient theatrical experience to see movies where dozens of people get shot in the face. I suppose there is still good left in this world. That the John Wick intellectual property has grown to the point of being a playable skin in Fortnite, 2017, is a sign of how mainstream audiences appreciate both the brand and the stylistic resurgence it represents. I have no delusions about hard R action films dominating theatrical releases above all else, but it's satisfying how a sizable chunk of the general population now has a passing clue about what kind of cinema I love most. Enter John Wick 3. Third directorial feature by former stuntman and longtime colleague of star Keanu Reeves, Chad Stahelski. Stahelski has staked his entire career on this franchise, transforming from an unnamed Matrix, 1999, stuntman to neo-noir action thriller auteur in a career metamorphosis as stunning as Jordan Peele's turn to horror, for example Get Out, 2017, Us, 2019. To say the man has run wild with Derek Kolstad's efficient, bare-bones original script would be a vast understatement, as the property has embraced film noir aesthetics, gun-fu choreography, and diegetic minutiae in a way few series have, niche or mainstream. It's a franchise that's cognizant of what its hardcore fans want, yet refuses to descend into cynical meta-commentary a la Deadpool or blow its background narrative beyond storytelling necessity. With its latest and possibly not final entry, the John Wick series proves itself not only one of Hollywood's finest modern action properties, but also one of its most patient, most careful diegetic world builders. The franchise's remarkable consistency in both concept and execution make differentiating John Wick 3, JW3, from its predecessors difficult. That's a good problem to have when your original film is 2014's John Wick, JW, and your first sequel is the loud, proud, and beautiful John Wick 2, JW2, yet, in hindsight, analytical criticism of this latest sequel was destined to be repetitive given how confident Stahelski and Kolstad are in their command of this cinematic material. What is new to say about JW3 relative to JW or JW2 that doesn't reference the franchise's correlative, causational rise with the resurgence of adult-orientated action cinema? Its fluid close-quarters combat coalesces with its charismatic action stars and then lusts in smooth, identifiable cinematography and striking neon colors. Its narrative is constructed around obscure yet enticing organized crime syndicates and their mythology, and Tyler Bates and Joel J. Richards' electric guitar-based soundtrack thumps in the background. Sound familiar? The lone elements distinguishing JW3 from its predecessors are its somewhat inconsistent pacing in its opening act, 3-4 brief action scenes back-to-back-to-back-to-back, Halle Berry's supporting performance with her two German shepherds, and the film's video game-inspired boss battles in its final act, the latter a clear nod to the original Raid. Random trivia: Yayan Ruhian and Saseparif Rahman, lead villains of The Raid, 2011, and The Raid 2, 2014, respectively, guest star as minor villains. The former is a slight disappointment given how much of a well-oiled machine JW2 was in terms of pacing, though the visual and thematic references to video game antagonist hierarchy at the end compensate for that. Berry, meanwhile, mangles her simple, straightforward dialogue, though her dedication to her action sequences is appreciated, as are the number of times her dogs chomp on enemy groins. Bottom line, if you were impressed by the work of star Keanu Reeves, screenwriter Derek Kolstad, and director Chad Stahelski and the previous two John Wick features, you know what to expect with this latest sequel. Perhaps the most positive thing I can say about John Wick 3 is how comparable it is to the rest of the franchise without feeling staled, repetitive, or predictable in the slightest. Discussing each film in detail may be monotonous, but the films themselves are anything but. The John Wick franchise may be likened to the phrase, "If it ain't broke, don't fix it," which is a rarer cinematic phenomenon than one might think. How many sequels or spin-offs grow stale due to repeating the same formula, all while changing minimal, if any, details from their respective originals? The fact that Stahelski's John Wick keeps gunning and throwing and punching and wrist-locking without losing steam is a small marvel. In a world where franchises must reinvent themselves, for example The Fast and the Furious, 2000, to survive or peak by their first sequel, for example Empire Strikes Back, 1980, Aliens, 1986, The Dark Knight, 2008. John Wick shows no signs of changing things up or slowing down. It doesn't have to. Summary recommendation: Stahelski, Kolstad, and Reeves may as well ride this franchise till they die. After 3 films with minimal adjustment and formula or execution and remarkably stable results, the John Wick series appears the exception to the franchise rule. It neither adapts, nor dies, only pushing forward with the uncanny ability to entertain no matter the nitpicks. However, a broken bar. Speaking of nitpicks, John Wick 3 could have omitted an early action sequence or 2 and Halle Berry still can't act. I like her dogs, though. A greater than recommended. Water remains wet? What is the function of all those garish neon lights in the upper levels of the New York Continental? Created by David Benioff, D.B. Weiss. Vertical bar written by David Benioff, D.B. Weiss, George R.R. Martin, Brian Cagman, Vanessa Taylor, Dave Hill, Jane Espenson. Directed by Alan Taylor, Alex Graves, David Nutter, Mark Mylod, Jeremy Podswa, Daniel Minahan, Michelle McLaren, Alex Sakharov, Miguel Sapochnik, Neil Marshall. Vertical bar starring Sean Bean, Peter Dinklage, Nikolaj Coster-Waldau, Lena Headey, Amelia Clark, Ian Glenn, Kit Harington, Sophie Turner, Maisie Williams, Michelle Fairley, Richard Madden, Alfie Allen, Isaac Hempstead Wright, Jack Gleason, Rory McCann, Aidan Gillen, Liam Cunningham, Charles Dance, Kenneth Hill, Jerome Flynn, Gwendolyn Christie, Ewan Rion, Natalie Emanuel, Jacob Anderson. No. Of seasons, 8. Vertical bar. No. Of episodes, 73. I've written before how selective I am with television shows. Most shows, be they the serialized, episodic classics of decades past, for example Star Trek, 1966 to 1969, or the long-format narratives that dominate modern pop culture, are considerable time investments. Television shows, unlike feature-length films, are marathons rather than sprints, requiring endurance, patience, and a contractual obligation on the part of viewers to evaluate them in totality, with the benefit of hindsight. To fail to appreciate an ambitious 50-70-hour cinematic narrative as a reaction to, say, an underwhelming, for example The X-Files, 1993 to 2002, 2016, 2018, The Wire, 2002 to 2008, or disastrous, for example Penny Dreadful, 2014 to 2016, Lost, 2004 to 2010. Conclusion is to waste not the artist's time, but one's own. The sprawling ensemble cast, diverse characters, ambitious storytelling, and heightened medieval realism of Game of Thrones, world is now the fodder of mainstream pop culture. To say the show's brutal, violent aesthetic and complex, subversive narrative could only have existed on television, specifically on HBO and specifically during this time period, is a safe bet. Its narrative is too massive, broad, complicated, and at times, bloated to be told outside of a long-format TV series, its source material too graphic and controversial for any theatrical release, limited or mainstream, and its growing budget too insurmountable for any company but the home box office to tackle in the late 2000s early 2010s. Not even Netflix had the muscle to risk a project like this in 2008. Its size and scope in terms of both tell-writing and direction are its greatest strengths and weaknesses. Like numerous high-profile TV shows before it, its massive cast, marathon story, and larger-than-life production values set it apart from all other television while also dooming or at least handicapping its ending. The show's source material, A Song of Ice and Fire, a Soif, 1996, by George R.R. Martin, remains 21,000+ page novels short of completion. As of this writing, the author revealed the broad outlines of his planned ending to creators D.B. Weiss and David Benioff, also known as D.D. or Dumb and Dumber, in order for the latter to complete their adaptation. In terms of sheer cinematic risk-taking on the small screen, only Lost best Scott, at least Scott had an outline before shooting. The show's weaknesses are most obvious in seasons 5 and 7, 8. A frequent criticism of the show by SOIF loyalists and some TV fans is how the series' quality dipped after 1. Exhausting its published source material and 2. Abbreviating its final 2 seasons, 7, 8, to 7 and 6 episodes, respectively. I disagree with the first point but sort of agree with the second. GOT's seasonal quality follows the standard arc of most successful, long-format TV shows in that its first season, 10 episodes, is effective if limited by its budget. Studios/showrunners don't invest unlimited money on unproven projects. Its middle seasons, seasons 2-4, 30 episodes, peak in quality once the showrunners hit their filmmaking stride in both writing and direction, and its later seasons, seasons 5-8, 33 episodes, decline to various extents, depending on which fans you survey. To me, this predictable arc until writing execution seems more a function of standard filmmaking precedent than a failure of literary adaptation. Furthermore, many critics and fans consider season 6, based mostly on unpublished SOIF material, superior to season 5, based mostly on published SOIF material. Some even argue season 6 is one of the better seasons of the show, which is a sentiment that I support as well. My point here is that while the broad, epic narrative of GOT, SOIF may have deserved additional episodes, especially since HBO was willing to foot the bill. I don't buy David Benioff and D.B. Weiss running out of published material as the primary reason for the show stumbling at the finish line. Compared to the complexity of its weaknesses, GOT's strengths are relatively straightforward. Its direction in both dramatic scenes and major battle sequences is stupendous, with almost no subplot, supporting character, or violent plot twist visually overlooked. Though GOT takes advantage of its diverse cast and intriguing, colorful premise, it's the series' visual execution of an otherwise convincing alternative medieval history, intermixed with subdued fantasy elements, that makes it unique. Big and small screen projects have flaunted ambitious, thematically dense premises with huge ensemble casts before, both fantasy, for example The Lord of the Rings, Lauter, 2001 to 2003, and otherwise, for example The Wire, 2002 to 2008, but GOT's greatest, most impressive feat has always been its subtle yet significant paradigm shift of contemporary fantasy through visual means. It's difficult to oversell just how memorable GOT's production values are, from its numerous steady-cam long takes following principal characters in battle to its diverse location shoots, for example Morocco, Northern Ireland, Scotland, Spain, Iceland, Croatia, Malta, to its impeccable set designs to its limited, yet near-perfect digital effects. GOT rivals Peter Jackson's Lauter in terms of seamless integration of practical and digital effects. Its bread and butter, meanwhile, those boring dramatic scenes of characters politicking, bribing, seducing, and threatening one another, are as well staged and acted as the artsiest Shakespeare adaptation. Even a scene as simple as characters seating themselves for a council meeting is blocked, staged, lit, and edited for maximum cinematic effect. The exquisite medieval sets behind those characters is almost a bonus. This ain't no Phantom Menace, 1999. Working in conjunction with the show's powerful direction are, 1, its acting direction and, 2, its music. The latter includes character motifs, noble house themes, pulse-pounding action symphonies, as well as clever, emotional subversions of horrific on-screen violence. For example The Hold Steady's The Bear and the Maiden Fair, Raymond Jawadi's Light of the Seven and The Night King. Make no mistake when I say Jawadi's work complements the series' visuals the way Howard Shore's did for Lauter. It's that effective. The former pertains to how often numerous characters ramble on extended monologues, which might feel cheesy or ridiculous if not for how well the actors deliver them. The cast, From Peter Dinklage to Liam Cunningham to Lena Headey to Aidan Gillen, chew their period dialogue like champions and put countless pandering Oscar moments to shame. The lone major weakness of the show that has nothing to do with its unwieldy source material or DD's adapted teleplays is Emilia Clarke. Her storyline's lack of tone, emotion, and gravitas is almost exclusively a function of her limited range, unable to portray emotions beyond either A. meekness or B. fuming rage. That is the extremes of actors' emotional range. How her performance inversely correlates with the show's overall quality, meaning she's decent in seasons 1, 7, and 8, but quite bad in seasons 3-6. Is the show's biggest in-joke. If not for her subplot's brilliant digital effects and calculated portrayal of her character's dragons, no one would have given two shits about her storyline until it finally merged with the bulk of the regular cast in season 7. In summary, whether you believe the series peaked in season 3 or season 6, or that David Benioff and D.B. Weiss should have handed the reins to other showrunners after season 5, Game of Thrones is a monumental filmmaking achievement. My crediting the visual prowess of the show's directors over its tell-writers or even its cast may irk some, but I argue the franchise's success as a television phenomenon remains, like all cinematic projects, most dependent on its visual execution. Discussion over controversial adaptation decisions made in the writer's room will continue for years to come, but the consistent audio-visual strengths of the show speak for themselves. The series gave us 70 hours worth of dramatic fantasy, heightened medieval allegory, and cinematic spectacle comparable to the best of Hollywood. Its production values alone are impressive, but its juxtaposition of those elements against its impeccable cinematic drama are what make it an essential piece of modern filmmaking. Was its ultimate climax disappointing? Yes. Could I recommend a project more? Near impossible. Summary recommendation: when your show produces career best performances from the likes of Charles Dance and Sean Bean, and transforms over half a dozen unknowns, for example Gwendolyn Christie, Maisie Williams, Sophie Turner, Kit Harington, Emily Clark, Alfie Allen, Nicolaj K. Osterwalde, into bona fide stars, you must be doing something right. Combine that with nearly a dozen blockbuster action sequences, a captivating series mythology, and an unforgettable soundtrack, and you have the defining television experience of the 2010s. However, broken bar production issues as a result of accelerated pacing in the series' final 2 seasons, as well as sloppy decision-making on the part of creators David Benioff and D.B. Weiss, undercut Game of Thrones' epic conclusion. Emilia Clarke's hamstrung Daenerys Targaryen, a series favorite, is also the show's most consistent weak link. Review. 13 A crushing disappointment. I'll get that out of the way right now. While I didn't believe Avengers: Infinity War was the slam dunk classic that some, or even the majority of, fans did, I did have hopes that my reservations with that film would be addressed by the second film, that things that troubled me would make sense in hindsight. Alas, the simple truth of Endgame is that it doesn't. Indeed, it just throws more wood into the fire and causes even more consternation. One caveat here: while I have read loads of Marvel comics from the 1960s/early 1970s era, I know nothing about the original Thanos material in the comics that, presumably, led to an Infinity War saga that crossed over several of the Marvel Comics lines, so I have no way of knowing if my issues with it all stems chiefly from the comics themselves and the films being faithful to them. I suppose the filmmakers are caught in no man's land, somewhat, if they are beholden to those comics and keeping faith with them, but if so, then oh boy, I wish they had gone the other way and trod some other path. Time travel, alternate timelines, ignoring time paradoxes with some kind of casual nod. That's just movies remark and just doing whatever they please. Let's get this right. At the end, for some unfathomable reason they just don't make clear, while they have dismissed the inherent paradoxes of time travel as nonsense, they maintain that somebody has to go back and return the Power Stones to where they came from in the several desperate time zones and locations. So Captain America elects to do this, and they sent him back. Presumably he has some kind of time machine wristwatch so that once he delivers one Power Stone he can then dial up another location, time and deliver the next one and so on. which suggests that perhaps they should have done this in the first place when they originally went back for them all the heroes together to each Power Stone and then move on to the next, etc. But anyway, conveniently bypassing that particular plot hole, Captain America goes back and delivers each Power Stone, presumably fixing any temporal issues we were earlier told were not an issue. Then he decides to go back to 1940s America and his lost love Peggy Carter and spends his life with her, presumably spending his life in some alternate timeline thus created, and yet ends up on the park bench in the current timeline as an old man. Surely he should be in some other universe, timeline in which he stayed with Peggy, not the one in which he fought in the various Avengers, Captain America movies and Peggy married someone else and a broken bar. It's just noise. I know that all it is. It's all nonsense, trying to make sense of it, and it's only a comic book superhero caper. It's grown men, and women, dressed up in silly costumes with silly powers that defeat all laws of physics. But surely it could do without all that noise of plot holes and paradoxes and sensical conflicts and fan service. That first section of Endgame, in which our heroes traumatized by the finale of Infinity Wars unite to track down Thanos and undo the snap that took out 50% of all life in the universe. Surely that should have just been the entire Endgame movie, just spread it out into some huge interplanetary adventure figuring out where Thanos is and figuring out a way to defeat him and use the gauntlet to fix everything. I mean, ultimately, it would do without all the time travel theatrics, which don't ultimately really fix everything. We don't get Game or back, or the Vision etc., and just give me headaches every time I think about it. Time travel is real, okay, so we go back and kill Thanos before the events of Infinity War. We've established it won't create any time paradox because Back to the Future is just, hey, a movie. We go back, nuke Thanos or flush him out and airlock or decapitate him and presto, everybody's back, because Thanos didn't live to get all the Power Stones. Or, let's go back to every previous Marvel movie that featured a Power Stone and steal it and destroy it before Thanos could get it. Presto, everyone's back, and there's no Power Stones or gauntlet that could ever snap them away. No, instead, let's go back, steal those Power Stones, then use it to do our own snap, without the gauntlet. A broken bar, yeah, only the gauntlet can harness and control the powers of those Power Stones. I think that was established earlier. So what the frack does Iron Man do at the end of Endgame? When he and Thanos are having that wrestling contest, Iron Man somehow comes out of it with the Power Stones without Thanos assessing what he's done in a split second of wrestling masterclass brilliance. And no, I don't remember if he's actually wearing the gauntlet, having somehow undressed Thanos of it like some kind of party trick Paul Daniels would be proud of. He's just in his Iron Man suit and somehow he performs a counter-snap anyway. WTF. The grand conclusion of the saga has me scratching my head about what the hell actually happened. A clever twist or terrible storytelling? I realize they filmed both Infinity War and Endgame together, back to back, but it really feels as though they shot and released Infinity War, and then had to figure some way out of it with Endgame, to fix it all back. How do you fix the problem of Infinity War? Seems to be a question they didn't already have an answer to, which for me feels weird, because presumably they had all this mapped out before they even started shooting any of Infinity War, never mind what Endgame became. I mean, they did, obviously, because this is how they made the two films, but it doesn't feel like it. It doesn't feel inherently sound or whole, which is what disturbed me the most about Endgame. Repeat viewings may answer some of my concerns and may make more sense of it all, but I rather doubt it. I think Endgame, and it's a bit of a shame, but that also includes Infinity War before it, is rather a misstep for Marvel. The box office seems to be beyond spectacular, so I'm likely in the minority as usual, but hey, box office billions in no way reflects upon actual quality. It just possibly reflects upon the gullibility of fanboys and the general public clamoring for the next big event movie. From my one current viewing, I'm of the opinion that Endgame was pretty poor and a crushing disappointment. And next week I'm watching the grand conclusion of Season 8 of Game of Thrones, another saga that threatens to collapse under the weight of fan expectations and several years of build-up and hype and popular culture hysterics. I sense a pattern emerging, and it's not particularly pretty. A broken bar.